What if Harry was sorted into Hufflepuff? The corridor is yellow and black and full of smoke. May 1998, deep under the greenhouses. The barrel-lined dead end that first years are told is a joke, a trick wall, a place no one important ever needs to go. Harry Potter stands there now in tattered Hufflepuff robes, back to the carved stone badger, wand raised toward the far end of the passage where the Death Eaters are coming. The smell hits first, smoke, sharp and bitter from burning tapestries above, damp earth, cool and heavy, seeping through the stones, a trace of something green and crushed from the gardens overhead. It mixes into a scent that feels like the whole school, burning and breathing at once. Behind him, through the round doorway, come the muffled cries of younger students pressed into the common room, their voices blurred by wards and fear, and too many people in one underground space. The barrels shake, a thunder of blows. Someone on the other side laughs high and harsh. Yellow sparks shiver along the invisible line where the entrance wards meet the corridor. Each impact sends a dull ache through Harry's arm as his shield charm catches and bends, gold light flaring, then thinning, then flaring again. He does not charge. No one here does. The Hufflepuffs are kneeling in a tight ring just inside the common room, hands braced to the floor, wands pointed down, chanting low and steady. Old words Professor Sprout taught them in a greenhouse years ago when this was only theory and stories. Their magic runs through the stone like water through roots, feeding the barrier instead of throwing themselves into the chaos upstairs. Loyalty, Sprout once said, is not about noise. Harry walks the short length of the corridor, counting breaths, counting impacts. He has been planning this since the first whisper that war would come to Hogwarts, since the first time a frightened second year asked him if the badgers would be safe. His boots scuff ash and dirt. His robes are torn at the hem, blackened where a curse grazed him on the 7th floor staircase. He looks tired. He looks unbroken. Footsteps pound from the castle's side faster than the heavy blows on the barrels. A figure appears through the haze, tartan robes streaked with dust. Potter. McGonagall's voice is hoarse, edged with urgency. She takes in the glowing wards, the chanting students, the boy in yellow and black standing like a sentry. For a heartbeat, the world narrows to this corridor, to him. "What are your orders?" she asks. The question hangs there, impossible and ordinary at once. Once he would have waited for her to lead, for Dumbledore, for anyone older, wiser, more certain. Now the head of Gryffindor looks to the Hufflepuff, who has turned a cellar common room into the last unbroken sanctuary in the school. Behind McGonagall, Kingsley's tall silhouette resolves from the smoke, aura robes singed, wand already in his hand. He looks at Harry, then past him to the faint, golden shimmer over the barrels, to the small shapes huddled beyond. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is the heart of Hogwarts now, not the tower. They look at each other. McGonagall's mouth tightens, not in disapproval, but in the brittle restraint of someone who knows she is no longer the one with the best map of this war. Harry turns just enough to let his fingers brush the stone beside him. The carved badger is worn smooth where generations of students have touched it for luck, for comfort, for no reason at all. His hand rests there, warm against the cool rock. "I promise," he whispers, too soft for the adults to hear, just loud enough for the stone and the children and himself. "I'll protect you, all of you." He feels the wards thrum under his palm, feels the chant behind him rise and settle like a single, steady breath. More than any description could contain, he lifts his wand. We do not see what he does next. Not yet. We hold on the yellow and black, The dirt and smoke, the boy who lived standing guard over the house everyone once called quiet, wondering how the world changed when the Sorting Hat sent Harry Potter here instead. The smoke and shouting fall away. August 1991, King's Cross Station. Early morning, pale light leaks through dirty glass panels high above the platforms, turning the air a tired grey. The loudest sound is the rattle and echo of a single set of trolley wheels, slightly crooked, protesting every crack in the floor. Harry walks behind it, both hands tight on the handle, shoulders hunched in Dudley's old jacket. The trunk on the trolley is battered. One corner is splintered and bandaged with duct tape. The brass lock sticks every time he opens it. On top of the trunk, tied down with fraying cord, sits an empty wire owl cage. No feathers, no straw. Just a small dish and a wooden perch, waiting. Dudley's faded backpack hangs off one of Harry's shoulders, the strap twisted from being too long. Inside that bag, a broken watch with a spiderweb crack across the face, still set to a time he cannot remember. His Hogwarts letter, edges going soft from being unfolded and folded again. A thin library book on trains he never returned, because no one noticed it was missing and he did not dare draw attention by taking it back. He has been planning this in the only ways he could, reading the letter until he could quote it, staring at the list of required books, whispering the words "term begins on September 1st" into his pillow just to hear them in the dark. But planning for a magical world is difficult when you have never even taken a normal train alone. He stops beneath the big station clock, checks the hands, checks them again, then digs into his pocket and counts his coins, thumb moving over each one like he's memorizing them by touch. Enough for the ticket back to Surrey if this is all a mistake. Barely. He steps aside as a family sweeps past. 2 parents, 3 children, luggage piled high. They look like they belong here. He looks at the sign above their heads, Platform 8. He looks down at his letter. Platform 9 3/4. He reads under his breath. The words do not change. They do not rearrange into something sensible. He turns the letter over as if instructions might be hiding on the back. Just the seal. He touches the wax with one finger, tracing the crest he still does not truly know. A guard walks by, eyes skimming the platform. Harry's shoulders tighten. He shifts so the trunk is between them, as if he can hide behind his own name, painted crookedly on the side. He has learned that adults with uniforms ask questions, and questions lead back to the Dursleys, to explanations that never sound right when he says them aloud. Families cluster near platforms 9 and 10, children in new coats, shiny shoes, laughter that bounces off the iron beams. Harry stands just outside the flow, where the draft from passing trains tugs at his 2 big clothes, but no one brushes against him. Not quite in it, not quite out of it, watching. He reads the line again, Platform 9 3/4. His lips move. His brow knots. How do you find a place that should not exist on a map that shows everything? He pushes the trolley forward, weaving through the crowd, heart thudding faster with every step. The signs for 9 and 10 rise ahead, black letters on whiteboards, perfectly ordinary. Between them a solid brick barrier, soot-stained and unremarkable. Harry stops. The trolley wheels squeak once, then fall silent. He looks at the barrier, he looks at his letter. The world holds its breath around him. This wall is just brick and mortar, and also something else, something that feels like a question laid across his path. He reaches out, not quite touching the stone. Somewhere far in the future, a boy in yellow and black will stand over another threshold, wand raised. Here now, this thin, uncertain child hesitates on the edge of the platform, unaware that the choice beyond this wall will rewrite everything we think we know about his story. The cupboard is dark and full of counting, not days, objects, little anchors in a life that keeps trying to wash him away. Under the thin blanket, a cracked plastic soldier whose arm used to hang by a thread until Harry found tape in the kitchen drawer and fixed it. 2 toy cars with mismatched wheels that he quietly swapped from other broken sets so Dudley would stop screaming about them. A watch with a fogged face that does not tick, but Harry still wears when he can, because it feels like knowing the time might mean knowing something else, something grown up. None of these things are supposed to be his. Officially, he owns nothing. Tucked against the wall behind a loose bit of skirting board is the only thing he ever bought for himself, a cheap exercise book from the school shop. On the cover, in tiny, careful letters, H. Potter. Inside, columns and lists. Monday, wash up, weed flower beds, polish Uncle Vernon's shoes. Tuesday, dust sitting room, sweep path, clean bathroom. He has been planning this since he was 9, turning chores into a schedule, a system, a way to walk through each day without missing anything that might make Aunt Petunia's mouth go thin. On the last page, pressed flat between 2 bits of tape, there is a flower. Yellow from the edge of the schoolyard, picked on a day when no one was looking. The petals are brittle now. He keeps it anyway, proof that something small and bright once grew just for itself. The memories that cling to these objects are quieter than lightning scars and prophecy. A broken window at school, a teacher demanding the culprit, Dudley smirking, another boy already blamed for too many things, shrinking in his chair. Harry hears himself say, "It was me," before he has decided to be brave. He just knows the other boy will cry when he gets home, and Harry already knows what it is to make dinner with tears in your eyes. Another evening, Uncle Vernon slams the front door hard enough to rattle the frame. Bad day at the drill company. Harry watches Aunt Petunia's hands shake as she lines up the plates. He moves faster, takes the heavy dishes, scrubs the pans before she can ask, wipes every surface twice. If the house shines, maybe Vernon won't shout as much, maybe no one will get locked in. At school, his lunch is thin. A slice of bread, a bit of cheese, sometimes nothing more. He still tears it in half when he sees a boy from the next class over pretending not to be hungry. No one notices. No one praises him. The world does not change. But Harry does it again the next week. He hates it when Dudley cheats at games. Not because he wants to win, because the rules are the only thing that seem to hold, the only part of life that does not bend around Dudley's fists. He says nothing because saying something means a bruise later, yet his jaw goes tight, and he looks away when Dudley laughs. A stray cat wanders into the alley behind the house one summer. Dudley and his friends corner it, poking with sticks. Harry steps between them without thinking, heart pounding, knowing the blows will come his way instead. They do. The cat runs. He counts that as a victory. The Dursleys polish their car, their front step, their story about themselves. They care about curtains that match and what the neighbours think. Harry cares about whether the floor is actually clean, whether the garden he weeds will grow properly, whether the cat gets away. He works hard because he must, because not working means punishment. But somewhere between the cupboard and the washing line, he decides that if he has to do a thing, he will do it properly. They can take his room, his letters, his name, but they cannot take how he does the work. These are not grand acts. No scar glows, no magical bank door swings open. Yet in the dark, a pattern is forming around him, made of loyalty that does not advertise itself. effort that does not expect applause, a stubborn belief that rules should be fair and people should be kind, more than any description could contain. One day a hat will look into this boy and see not only what he might become when the wands are drawn, but what he already is when no one is watching. The room is dark and full of lists. July 1991, the smallest bedroom at Privet Drive. A loose floorboard, a broken pencil, a boy bent over a scrap of paper like it contains the map out of his whole world. He has been planning this, not in grand Gryffindor-coloured fantasies of dragons and duels, but in tiny, careful handwriting that barely takes up half a line. On one page, things Hogwarts might expect. On another, questions to ask, if allowed. He prints them, neat and small. Uniforms, homework, curfew. Are there rules about talking at meals? Are there rules about letters home, about being sent back? The first Hogwarts letter lies beside his hand as a model. He has memorized every line. Not because the parchment is magical, though it is, but because it reads like a promise written directly to him. Term begins, you have a place, you will be provided. He traces the crest with one finger until the ink is almost smudged. Lion, snake, eagle, badger. 4 animals, 4 chances. One school that might, just might, be fair. At night, when the house is finally quiet, he folds that letter and slides it under his pillow, a thin shield between his skull and the springs. He lies flat, eyes open in the dark, repeating the words in his head, the way other children might repeat a story about heroes. He does not picture himself famous. He pictures a bed that no one can take away, sheets that are not Dudley's cast-offs, a trunk that locks and actually belongs to him. He does not dream of saving the world. He dreams of not being shouted at for existing in it. In the mornings, reality pushes back. Vernon eyes the school list and mutters about your lot, as if the word itself is something that needs washing off the table. Petunia insists he keep his head down, not embarrass them, not come back with ideas. Dudley laughs and says maybe they will keep him there forever, like sending Harry away is the best joke he has ever heard. Each remark lands. Each one also hardens something inside the boy who quietly copies his lists into a second notebook, just in case the first is found and torn. He has been planning this in the only way he knows how, by preparing to follow every rule, to give no one any excuse to say he cannot stay. He looks at the second later letters differently, the ticket to the platform, the reminder of term. They are anchors hammered into the future, proof that the bank, the train, the castle are all real places, and not some elaborate mistake that will be corrected at the last minute. If magic has rules, then maybe people there do too. The night before departure, his trunk sits open on the thin carpet, robes folded and refolded, textbooks stacked, then rearranged by size, then by subject. Quill, ink, spare parchment, the notebook of questions, the backup notebook, a bag containing everything he owns that feels truly his. He packs, unpacks, packs again. Each motion is a quiet spell of its own, binding his resolve tighter. At the very end, he lifts the first Hogwarts letter from under his pillow, smooths it once, and tucks it between the pages of his notebook. He stands there for a long moment, hand resting on the lid of the trunk. No audience, no prophecy, just a boy and a decision. Wherever I end up, he whispers into the dark, I am staying. I will work. I will not be sent back. The words are small, but the promise behind them is more than any description could contain. Far away in a dusty office, a patched hat stirs, as if it has just heard something it has been waiting years to hear. The hall is a roar of sound, clinking plates, rustling robes, hundreds of voices folding over each other until it is one low, living thunder. Candles float above the 4 long tables, dripping wax that never lands. The air smells of beeswax, roasted meat, polished wood, warmed by so many bodies. Harry walks behind Professor McGonagall, the hat and stool waiting like a test he has been planning for and not planning for his entire life. His hands are empty. No trunk, no letter to hold. Just a name everyone here seems to know and a world he is still learning to see. He feels the weight of eyes, older students craning, first years whispering. Somewhere at the Gryffindor table, a red-haired boy leans forward, face open and eager. At the Slytherin table, a pale boy with a pointed face looks at him as if he is already a chess piece. He looks at her. She looks at him. A bushy-haired girl near the front clutches her schedule like a shield, eyes bright, calculating. "Potter! Harry!" The name slices through the noise. He walks, legs hollow, until he reaches the stool. The hat comes down. Darkness, warm, dusty cloth presses over his ears, and at once the hall is gone. The thunder becomes a hush. A voice murmurs in his head, measured and curious. "So this is where you ended up." Harry freezes. He knows somehow that this is the hat. "Ended up?" he thinks. "Oh, I have been planning this," the hat says, amused. "Or rather, I have been waiting. Let us see." Bravery. You stand up to larger boys even when it costs you. Resourceful too. Cupboard survival, inventive use of broken toys, a certain talent for not being caught. Slytherin would make something sharp of you. A flicker of green. Power, whispers, a path where he learns every rule only to bend it. A house that knows about old families, banks, blood inheritance, ancient magic. A house that would understand the boy who walked into Gringotts like a question. No, Harry thinks, but it is not desperate. It is tired. I don't want to be somewhere people expect me to be special. Gryffindor, then, the hat muses. Ah, you would do well there too. Daring, nerve, chivalry. They would cheer you, hoist you on their shoulders, make you their banner. Another flicker, red and gold. Laughter, noise, a table that would welcome him loudly. Adventures, danger, the spotlight burning hot on his skin. He flinches from it. I just want somewhere I can belong, he thinks, small and fierce. Somewhere I can work, somewhere fair. The hat goes very quiet. Fair, it repeats. You value fairness because you have lived without it. You would labour without complaint for anyone who showed you simple kindness. Loyalty runs through you like a root, deep and stubborn. You crave a home more than a throne. Images rise unbidden, sharing food with a stranger on the train. The way he watched other families at the station. The way he already knows he would defend the girl with the book. The boy with the hand-me-down robes, anyone who sits beside him and does not flinch. Hufflepuff, the hat says softly. It lingers there, tasting the word. Patience, hard work, loyalty. The underestimated house. You would not shine as a sword, but as a steady fire. You might change everything from the quiet places. Harry holds his breath. It feels right in a way more than any description could contain. Better be Hufflepuff. The last word is shouted aloud. The hat lifts. Light and noise crash back in. For one suspended heartbeat, the great hall is stunned, staring at the boy who lived under yellow and black banners. Then the Hufflepuff table erupts. Cheers, hands slamming the wood, older students standing to wave him over, like he has always belonged there. He walks toward them, each step a choice. Somewhere, Dumbledore's eyes narrow. Somewhere else, A pale boy's plan tilts. The camera could cut here, but we stay 1 second longer on Harry's face as he sits among the badgers, not knowing yet what this single, quiet word has just rewritten. The hall is suddenly too quiet, then the sound comes back all at once, like someone has lifted a silencing charm. At the Gryffindor table there is a sharp intake of breath, a rustle of red and gold as first years twist to look at him. One freckled boy with a smear of dirt on his nose, Ron, though Harry does not know his name yet, stares, mouth open, as if the hat has misread the script. This was supposed to be simple. Boy Who Lived, House of Lions, story told. At Slytherin, Draco Malfoy's smirk freezes, then drains away. He has been planning this, the dramatic handshake, the alliance sealed under green banners, the way his father will nod when the letter home arrives. Now the boy he meant to collect is walking toward the wrong end of the hall. A prefect's hand closes on Draco's shoulder, a silent reminder to school his face. He looks up at the staff table instead, searching for answers. Ravenclaw does not gasp. Ravenclaw whispers, heads bend together, blue and bronze badges flashing as theories form in real time. Perhaps the hat sees something hidden. Perhaps Hufflepuff's reputation is incomplete. One girl with ink-stained fingers watches Harry walk and quietly revises everything she thought she knew about house magic. The walk itself stretches. The distance from the stool to the Hufflepuff table cannot be more than a few dozen steps, but it feels like a corridor in Gringotts, carved deep and lined with unseen doors. Harry's feet move. The world seems to lengthen around him. He keeps his eyes level and still sees too much. McGonagall's surprise is a flicker, there and gone like a candle guttering in a draught. Dumbledore's eyes catch his for half a heartbeat, the familiar twinkle, suddenly unreadable, less grandfatherly and more like the surface of the bank's underground lake. Bright, deep, hiding everything. A few older students in every house lean forward as he passes, not to welcome him, but to reassess the entire game board. Then yellow and black are in front of him, benches, faces, the smell of roasted meat and pumpkin. A tall boy with tidy hair and a badge that says Prefect Cedric Diggory stands just enough to offer his hand. The grip is steady, warm, as if this is the most natural thing in the world. "Welcome to Hufflepuff, Harry," he says. No fanfare, no awe, just certainty. Next to him, a girl with bubblegum pink hair that absolutely should not be allowed in a traditional school grins so hard she nearly knocks over a goblet. She catches it at the last second, winces at the splash, and mutters, "Watcher, sorry, Professor Sprout'll have my hide if I drown the new first year." Tonks. He will learn the name later, but the laugh that ripples around the table at her clumsiness reaches him now. Up at the staff table, Professor Sprout's smile is small and fierce. Her eyes shine as she looks at the cluster of badgers closing ranks around their newest cub. A moment of understanding passes between them that Harry cannot see. This changes things. Inside, he is a knot of contradictions, relief, because no one here seems disappointed to see him. Confusion, because the whispers from the other tables sting in ways he cannot name. And beneath it, a flicker of fear that he has already failed some invisible test, that whatever the boy who lived is supposed to be, a Hufflepuff is not it. He looks at the plates in front of him, at hands pushing dishes his way, as if feeding him is a shared mission. Someone nudges a bowl of roast potatoes toward his elbow. Someone else says lightly, "Well, if you know who couldn't beat us before, he definitely can't now." It is meant as a joke. It lands like a promise. Harry's laugh comes out startled and real, more than any description could contain, and for the first time in years, it does not feel like he is laughing alone. They look at each other, this odd little circle of Hufflepuffs and the boy who has rewritten their house in an instant. The camera could fade here, but it does not. It lingers on that shared, quiet amusement, on the way his shoulders loosen by a fraction, hinting that loyalty, not glory, might be the magic that shapes him next. The descent begins with a change in temperature. Cool air, stone-breathed and steady, curls around Harry's ankles as the Hufflepuff prefects lead the new first years away from the noise of the Great Hall and down, always down. He walks with his hand brushing the wall, rough stone. Centuries of students have done the same. The torches here burn lower, softer, but the corridors are not gloomy. Sunlight, coloured tapestries spill across the walls, woven with fields and orchards and laughing badgers that seem to move when he looks twice. The smell reaches him next. Warm yeast, butter, a hint of cinnamon. Somewhere close, in the hidden heart of the castle, the kitchens are still working. He has been planning this only in the vaguest way, imagining a tower, wind, stars, but this is different. Closer to the earth, closer to something that feels like shelter. A prefect taps a cheerful yellow tapestry, counts doors under her breath, then stops before what looks like nothing at all. Just a stack of barrels, ordinary and round. Watch closely, she says. She kneels, counts down 3 from the top, 2 from the side, and raps a precise rhythm on the second barrel from the bottom. Tap, tap, pause, tap, longer pause, tap, tap, tap. A pattern like a heartbeat with a skip in it. The lid swings back, revealing darkness edged in gold. If you get it wrong, another Hufflepuff adds, that one, he points to a neighbouring barrel, opens instead and pours vinegar everywhere. His grin is unkind only in theory. In practice, it is more warning than threat. Harry looks at the barrels, at the invisible line between welcome and a soaking, and understands. Playful, but serious. A password you carry in your hands, not in your head. No portrait to trick, no riddle to fail. It is suddenly very easy to believe the rumour that this is the only common room no enemy has ever breached. He ducks through the opening. Warmth hits him at once. Not just heat from the fire, but a layered warmth. Thick rugs underfoot, low ceilings that make the room feel like a held breath, round doorways opening onto dormitories like burrows in an old tree. Plants spill from every shelf and windowsill, leaves brushing his shoulders as he walks. Copper kettles hang over the fire, polished to a soft gleam that catches the light and scatters it in golden fragments across fat armchairs and squashy sofas. There are no sharp corners. He notices that immediately, the way someone who has known too many sharp things always will. Tables are rounded. Hearthstones are curved. No locked doors in sight, only curtains, bead screens, open arches. The soundscape is gentle. Crackling logs, murmur of conversation, a burst of laughter that rises and settles without anyone shouting to be heard. Food appears almost as quickly as questions. A plate of rock cakes passed along a sofa. A bowl of roasted nuts changing hands. No one seems to own anything entirely. Snacks are shared, stories spill over from one cluster to the next, and when Harry hesitates at the edge of a crowded couch, 3 different students wordlessly shift, making space. They do not stare at his scar first. They look at his face, his tiredness, the way he clutches his trunk handle too tightly. A moment of understanding passes between them. He does not know their names yet, but the house does something wordless and collective. It makes room. Later, when the fire has burned down to embers, he lies in his new bed. The curtains are thick, the blankets heavy in a way that feels like a promise Around him, soft snores, one roommate whistles faintly on each exhale. From far off, through stone and soil, comes the muted clatter of pots in the kitchens, the late shift finishing up. He listens. No cupboard door, no sharp voice on the stairs. For the first time in his life, he realizes he does not have to sleep with one ear open. In this tucked-away corner of the magical world, beneath barrels and sunlight tapestries, safety is not a favor he has to earn. It is architecture. And above them, in towers and corridors that do not yet know it, the story of Hogwarts is already bending around the quiet fact that Harry Potter's first true home is here, underground, in a room built for loyalty and rest. What happens to a war when its future general learns, first, how to be at peace? The common room is quieter now, fire low, voices a murmur, parchment rustling like leaves underground. Harry sits on one of the deep yellow armchairs and realizes something simple and enormous at the same time. These are the faces he will wake up to, walk beside, and defend. On his left, a boy with ink-stained fingers and a nose always half in a notebook. Name, Martin Cole. Muggle-born. First question at the feast was not about wands or dragons, but whether Hogwarts keeps official Quidditch statistics. He has been planning this apparently for years without knowing it, memorizing league tables from smuggled magazines, sketching plays in the margins of maths homework. Now he looks at Harry with shy, startled awe, then asks if he thinks professional teams adjust for altitude. Across from him, Hannah Fleet leans over a herbology text, so thick it might be used as a doorstop. No-nonsense Freckles' hair pulled back with a practical band. She talks about Professor Sprout, the way other children talk about famous seekers, listing plant properties, soil compositions, the quiet, stubborn magic of roots that break stone. When Harry mentions he has never kept a plant alive, she just nods and says, "We can fix that," like it is already decided. The older boy in the corner wears a prefect badge that catches the firelight. Evan Bones. Calm voice, steady hands. He walks Harry through Hufflepuff traditions, rotating study partners, shared chore charts, the unspoken rule that no one eats alone, if it can be helped. He does it without the faintest edge of condescension. When Harry admits he does not know what a prefect actually does, Evan only smiles and explains, as if ignorance is a starting point, not a failing. At meals, the circle widens. Ron Weasley drops onto the bench opposite, all elbows and easy jokes, a Gryffindor scarf already hanging crooked around his neck. They talk about chocolate frogs, about siblings, about how the castle looks at night. Ron complains that his brothers know everything already, that he is tired of being compared. The insecurity flickers and then hides behind another story about Fred and George. There is warmth there and a slightly desperate hope that Harry will laugh. But he has to cross the aisle now, literally. Gryffindor table to Hufflepuff bench. His new housemates tease him, Weasley, slumming it with the badgers, and Ron laughs it off, ears a little red. Harry laughs too, but the sound feels thin. Hermione Granger arrives in his life differently. No shared common room, no late-night whispers across the fire. Instead, the library. Long tables, towering shelves. She looks up from a stack of books when he asks if the seat is taken. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, two people who have raved about this world more than they have lived in it. Their conversations are precise. Homework, spell theory, the ethics of house elves mentioned in a footnote. She corrects his wand movement. He shares what little he knows about wards from a single dusty book at Gringotts. It is partnership, but not yet friendship. Not the effortless trio the world remembers. Draco Malfoy recalibrates. On the train he had imagined Harry as a Gryffindor rival or a Slytherin prize. Hufflepuff does not fit his script. When he sees the yellow on Harry's tie, his lip curls. Relief and contempt mixed. Wasted on them, he says loudly in the corridor. All that name and he hides with the mudblood lovers. He has been planning this too, alliances, postures, the careful choreography of pure-blood politics. Underestimating Harry because of one house crest will be his first real strategic mistake. By October, invisible lines have formed. Ron's dorm mates nudge him when he stands to walk toward the Hufflepuff table. Hermione's house praises her for joining Gryffindor study circles, not noticing when she glances toward a quiet boy in yellow and black. Harry feels the pull of it all. Loyalty to the Badgers, who have made space for his silence. Affection for the red-haired boy who crossed a hall full of watching eyes. Respect for the girl who meets him in rows of books and asks hard questions about magic and law. He wonders, not for the first time, if choosing one will mean losing the others. If the architecture of safety below will ask him, sooner than he is ready, to defy the towers above. And somewhere, as Halloween approaches, the castle itself seems to lean in, listening, waiting to see which line Harry Potter will step over first. The greenhouse is warm and full of earth-scented whispers, damp soil, soft light, the quiet tap of roots against glass when a plant shifts, almost listening. It is here, not in a tower, that Harry gets his first true champion. Sprout watches him one afternoon as the class files out, leaving overturned pots and stray pufferpods behind. Harry stays. He has been planning this in the smallest way, choosing to stack trays instead of racing to lunch to see if anyone notices. He wipes down benches, gathers fallen bulbs, moves carefully so he does not break anything that is still trying to grow. Sprout looks at him over a crate of fertilizer. There is soil on her cheek, a smudge on her hat, and a steadiness in her gaze that makes him stand straighter. "You work hard," she says simply. "Not because anyone is watching. That's Hufflepuff magic, Potter." Later, when he apologizes for being slow, she shakes her head. Talent comes and goes, effort stays. Our strength is showing up for each other. Every time. The words settle into him like seeds. A week later, chaos arrives in yellow and black. Tonks barrels into the common room, hair a violent shade of purple, tripping over a low table, laughing before she even hits the floor. She is older, an Aura trainee home on a visit, and instantly, relentlessly Hufflepuff. She teaches him pranks that sting but do not scar, soap that makes your hair stand on end for an hour, ink that writes your honest thoughts only if you consent. She shows him how to laugh when he mispronounces a spell and turns his own shoelaces into vines. Bravery isn't about who looks coolest, she tells him, sitting cross-legged by the fire. It's about who you're standing in front of when it all goes wrong. He looks at her, she looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. Cedric is different again, calm, precise, a prefect who walks the corridors like he knows every stone by name. When Harry first meets him, he half expects awe or suspicion. Instead, he gets a nod. Nothing more. Cedric explains Quidditch tryouts like he's briefing a teammate, not a legend. How sign-ups work, which upper years to avoid annoying, where the wind hits hardest over the Hufflepuff stands. He sketches out class schedules, warns Harry which professors expect essays early, which rumours to ignore. "People will talk," Cedric says matter-of-fact. "They don't know you, let your work answer." There is no speech about destiny, only a map for surviving the term. Pattern interrupt. Imagine this same boy under scarlet banners. Canon Harry is pulled toward fireworks and flying cars, toward mentors who leap first and calculate later. Here, his guides are earth, laughter, and quiet competence. Sprout praises preparation. Tonks models protection over posturing. Cedric treats collective success as the only real victory. The world still whispers about the boy who lived, but his house keeps asking a different question. Who are you living for? Without anyone naming it, they are training him. To think in teams, to count exits, to measure risk against who might be left behind. When danger comes, and it will, this Harry will not charge alone down a corridor because the story demands a hero. He will look at his friends, at his house, at the long shadow of consequences and choose a different kind of courage. The castle keeps listening. But now so does he. The castle keeps listening, but now so does he. Breakfast is louder. Not because anyone shouts, but because of the silence that falls whenever Harry walks into the Great Hall with a cluster of yellow and black around him, instead of red and gold. Heads turn. Conversations stutter. The Hufflepuff table, usually a soft hum at the side of the world, becomes the place everyone pretends not to look at. He feels it in the rhythm of the day. At meals, more eyes track his path, then slide to Sprout, measuring her, as if she has been planning this. In the corridors, whispers trail after him when he walks with Susan and Hannah and a tall fifth year named Diggory, not with Ron's easy sprawl of Gryffindors. In staff meetings, McGonagall's mouth tightens, Snape's eyes narrow, and more than once Dumbledore's gaze flickers toward Pomona Sprout, thoughtful, calculating. The first open test comes outside Charms. A Slytherin boy leans against the wall, lips curled. "Potter the Puff," he says just loud enough. "Couldn't hack real houses." The corridor stills. Harry's stomach knots. His hand twitches toward his wand. Before he can move, a Ravenclaw girl with ink-stained fingers looks up from her book. "You do know Hufflepuff took everyone who didn't fit your little boxes," she says mildly, "and still produced more steady auras than Slytherin in the last 50 years. She walks away before he can thank her. A moment of understanding passes between them anyway, thin but real. Small things keep happening. A Gryffindor first year hovers at the entrance to the basement corridor, clutching a stack of parchment. He says to a passing Hufflepuff prefect. "Is it true your common room feels nicer? Could I maybe revise there? It's just the tower's a bit loud." There is an awkward pause, then a shrug, then a quiet yes with conditions about not knowing the password. By the end of the week, 2 Ravenclaws and another Gryffindor have found reasons to accidentally end up near the barrels. Inside the house, the shift is sharper. Some students glow in the reflected attention, sitting a little straighter when Harry drops his bag at their section of the table, laughing a bit too loudly when he answers a question in class. Others bristle. "So now they notice us," an older girl mutters in the common room, "because the famous one landed here." A 7th year with ink on his cuffs looks up from his arithmancy. "Good," he says. "Then we show them what they should have seen all along." He has been planning this in his own way, Harry realizes, extra study groups, quiet tutoring, a list of muggle-borns who need help with magical terminology. Harry hates the way his name drags the light with it. He tells Sprout so after herbology, standing among the damp earth and the slow, green patience of plants. "I just want to be normal," he says, "not a symbol, not a banner for a house." She studies him, soil on her gloves, eyes kind and sharp. "Mr. Potter," she answers, "Hufflepuff has always been underestimated. Loyalty, hard work, fairness. They don't make headlines, but they keep people alive. Your presence gives my badgers a chance to show the school what has always been true." He looks at her. She looks at him. "You do not have to enjoy it," she adds softly, "but you can decide what they see when they look." The year moves, not with grand heroics, but with steady accumulation. Hufflepuff hands go up in class a little more often, group projects finish on time, lost first years are walked back to their dorms by students who never ask for thanks. In the entrance hall, the great hourglasses stand as they always have, yet by November, yellow gems are already pooling higher than usual in Hufflepuff's glass, catching the light. Not from a single dramatic rescue, from dozens of small, consistent acts that professors quietly reward. Other houses begin to notice. A Ravenclaw boy pauses, frowns up at the glass. A Gryffindor girl nudges her friend, nods toward the rising yellow. The Slytherins look, say nothing, but their eyes narrow, recalculating. The underdog house is moving slowly, deliberately, and the rest of Hogwarts is starting to realize that the badgers have teeth. The first scream is not human, it is benches scraping stone, 100 bodies jolting to their feet at once. Candles shudder overhead. Quirrell staggers into the great hall, turban askew, eyes wild. Troll, in the dungeons, he sways, milks the silence for one heartbeat too long. Thought you ought to know. He collapses. Chaos rises. But at the Hufflepuff table, the movement is different. Less stampede, more ripple. Harry is not half standing with Ron at his side. He is seated between Hannah and a fifth-year prefect who has drilled them, quietly, on what to do when the world tilts. They have been planning this, in their own small way. Every time Sprout mentioned safety, every time Cedric caught Harry after practice and said, "You know, we look after our own." Dumbledore's voice cracks, like a spell over the panic, sending houses to their dormitories. Benches scrape again. Students surge for the doors. Harry is moving with them when a single cold thought cuts through the noise. Hermione. He looks at the Gryffindor table, empty space where a bushy head should be. He looks at the prefect beside him. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. "Check your line," the prefect snaps. "Account for everyone." Names are called. 2 missing from Hufflepuff, both in the library. No one from Gryffindor answers for Hermione. Harry's voice comes out steadier than he feels. "Hermione Granger, first-year Gryffindor. She was in the toilets after charms. She doesn't know." There is a pause, small but decisive. The prefect's jaw sets. "Cedric, with me. We inform Professor Sprout. Harry, your point for the first years until I say otherwise." He has been planning this without knowing it, every corridor walked, every shortcut, catalogued as he learned this castle like a puzzle. Now he sketches it in low, urgent words as they move, a living map wrapped around a single missing girl. Sprout intercepts them near the stairwell, earth-stained robes flaring. Cedric is already at her side, wand in hand, calm in that way that makes people listen. Plans form quickly. Sprout to alert McGonagall and Flitwick, Cedric to lead a small, fast group, Harry included. No lone heroes. Clear roles, clear fallback points. If anything goes wrong, retreat to the nearest house common room, send a Patronus from there. The troll finds them first. It looms in the girls' bathroom doorway, club dragging, stench like a swamp set on fire. Hermione is inside, pressed against the far wall, eyes too wide. Harry feels the urge to sprint, to shout, to do something reckless and Gryffindor bright. Instead, he holds position because Cedric's hand is briefly on his shoulder, grounding. "Distraction," Cedric breathes. "Shields, then trip." Cedric and an older Hufflepuff step forward together, wands cutting twin arcs of light. Stinging hexes crack against the troll's face, bright and noisy, pulling its gaze away from the stalls. It roars, swings. The tiles shatter where Cedric was a second before. He rolls, comes up still casting. Harry and another boy move as one, shields flaring into place like overlapping panes of glass. The club slams down, the barrier shrieks but holds. Behind it, Harry yells, "Hermione, crawl toward me, now!" She moves on hands and knees, shaking, ducking under the wavering edge of the shield. He reaches through, fingers closing around her wrist, and hauls her into the safer shadow of the corridor. She looks at him like she has never seen him before. At the edge of the fight, a Hufflepuff girl Harry barely knows, third-year ink on her cuffs, herbology text always under one arm, plants her feet. Her wand traces a looping, vine-like pattern Sprout taught them in Greenhouse 3. "Ligustrum serpens," she whispers. The spell hits the floor. Roots surge from the cracks between stones, thick and pale, whipping around the troll's ankles. It stumbles, bellows, tries to wrench free. The next volley of jinxes slams into its knees. The giant body goes down hard. More than any description could contain lives in that moment. Terror, training, the quiet certainty of standing together. Professors arrive in a rush of robes and power, finishing what the students began. When the dust settles, the story does not arrange itself into a neat trio of Gryffindor heroes. In the hospital wing later, Hermione lies in a bed she does not quite need, listening. McGonagall's voice tight but sincere as she tells Sprout, "Your students showed remarkable presence of mind." Sprout's answer is soft, proud. Points are given not to a single name, but to Hufflepuff as a whole for coordination, loyalty, and restraint. Ron, hovering awkwardly at the foot of Hermione's bed, has seen it all from the corridor. Harry not charging in alone with him, but moving as part of a unit that never once hesitated to risk themselves for a girl from another house. He does not have words for the feeling that leaves. Hermione does. Later, when the ward is quiet, she turns her head. Harry is in the next bed, pretending to sleep, a bruise darkening along his arm where the shield almost failed. He looks at her. She looks at him. "You came," she says, voice small. "We all did," he answers. They look at each other for a long moment. Something shifts that is not just between two first years, but between houses, between stories of what courage is supposed to look like. Hermione has spent weeks alone at the Gryffindor table, buried in books, trying to earn a place with answers. Tonight, a house she does not belong to moved like a single organism to pull her out of a bathroom. She knows enough about the magical world now to understand how rare that is. The next morning, the castle hums with a different kind of gossip. Not about a foolish duel or a lucky swing of a club, but about Cedric's calm orders, about Sprout students casting in formation, about a third-year badger tangling a mountain in roots. A Ravenclaw girl wonders aloud whether Hufflepuff has been underestimated in every history book she has ever read. A Slytherin boy quietly notes that coordinated response is far more dangerous than isolated heroics. At breakfast, the hourglasses gleam. Yellow stones surge upward, catching the light. McGonagall's gaze lingers on the Hufflepuff table, on Harry laughing tiredly with his housemates, on Hermione perched at the edge of the bench as if she is not sure she is allowed to be there, and cannot quite make herself leave. Sprout catches Harry's eye over the teapot, a small nod. Approval and a warning. This is what it means to lead from the middle, not the front. Harry feels it settle in his chest, like a new kind of weight. The troll is gone, but the pattern it revealed remains. If Hufflepuff can turn a corridor ambush into a coordinated rescue, what else can they rewrite in this castle that thinks it already knows what bravery looks like? He has been planning this without realizing. Every study group, every shared set of notes, every quiet conversation about watching out for the younger years. The troll was only the first test. The next one will not be announced by a panicked professor. It will walk toward them in silence, hidden in stone and secrets. And when it comes, the badgers will not be under anyone's feet. They will be waiting. The castle is awake and watching. Stone, portraits, armor, all listening as rumors of a hidden treasure move like a draft through the corridors. By November, Harry knows two things. Someone tried to break into Gringotts, and Hagrid brought something out of Gringotts the very same day. He has been planning this without quite admitting it to himself, collecting pieces the way Professor Sprout collects cuttings, patient and methodical. A question here in the library with Hermione, a quiet word there in the kitchens with an eager elf who knows which professors walk where at night. This is where Hufflepuff changes the story. In Gryffindor, the mystery might have narrowed to 3 friends and a midnight dare. In Hufflepuff, it spreads, not recklessly, but like roots under soil branching. Ron still sits with him at meals, still mutters about the 3rd-floor corridor and Snape's greasy looks. But now there is Cedric, older, thoughtful, asking what Harry actually knows rather than what he thinks. There is Hannah, who remembers every odd timetable change, Ernie, who keeps track of which teachers look tired, a kitchen elf who whispers that Professor Quirrell smells of the Forbidden Forest. Hermione notices the pattern before anyone else. She looks at him. She looks at the loose circle of badgers around their table. A moment of understanding passes between them. He is building something, not a secret club, a watch. When they finally reach the conclusion that the Philosopher's Stone is at Hogwarts, hidden and warded, Harry does not say, "We have to go alone." He says, if the teachers can't keep it safe, more of us should at least know what's happening. The words land heavily in the Hufflepuff common room, soft-lit and low-ceilinged, full of plants that listen better than some adults. There is pushback. They are first years. This is Dumbledore's school. But Harry's voice is steady as he walks them through it. The troll, the Gringotts break-in, the way Quirrell's eyes never quite match his smile. He has been planning this, charting every oddity, and now the plan is simple in principle and terrifying in practice. They do not sneak for glory. They go because someone has to stand between Hogwarts and whatever is reaching for its heart. The traps themselves change under this light. The logic puzzle is not a frantic guess with flames at their backs. It is a parchment on a table days earlier. Hermione and Ernie arguing over clauses, while Susan annotates in neat handwriting. The answer is solved in advance, copied twice, folded into Harry's pocket like a spare key. The enchanted chessboard is no longer a stage for noble sacrifice. Ron, Cedric, and a second-year Hufflepuff chess prodigy spend an evening reconstructing moves, searching for a path where no piece is shattered, if they can help it. When they finally descend, Harry, Hermione, Ron and Cedric, with a rope charm agreed upon as the signal to retreat, the plan is explicit. Get in, warn Dumbledore if they can, get out together. Every step is measured against the question, how do we all come back? In the last chamber facing Quirrell and the whispering shade behind his turban, the story's centre shifts again. Harry's fear is real, sharp, but what roots him is not a prophecy he does not fully understand. It is the image of the Hufflepuff basement, of first years asleep under yellow hangings, of Cedric's hand on his shoulder before they came down here. He will not let this man, this thing, turn Hogwarts into a battlefield or a trophy. The stone comes to his pocket because he does not want it. He wants the school safe. He wants the people safe. That loyalty burns hotter than greed or ambition, and when Quirrell tries to seize him, it is that quiet, stubborn devotion that makes Harry untouchable. Later, in the hospital wing, Dumbledore looks older than Harry has ever seen him. He listens as Harry describes not just his own actions, but everyone's. The elf who warned them, the classmates who stayed behind in case they needed help, the way they refused to leave anyone out of the plan. The headmaster's eyes are thoughtful, distant, as if he is recalculating something deep and long-laid. "You chose to involve others," he says at last. "Most would have hidden this or rushed in with one or two trusted friends." Harry meets his gaze. "We're Hufflepuff," he says simply. "We look after each other." There is a pause, then a small, almost rueful smile. "Even for me," Dumbledore admits, "a Hufflepuff chosen one is complicated." He does not say, "I did not plan for this." He does not have to. Harry can feel it in the way the headmaster's eyes linger on the yellow trim of his hospital blankets, on the cluster of badgers waiting just outside the door, refusing to be sent away. The board has shifted. The old man knows it. The castle does too. And somewhere beneath their feet, in roots and stone and secret tunnels, Hufflepuff's quiet network keeps listening, already preparing for the next whisper of danger. The chamber is open and full of whispers. September 1992. The Hogwarts Express cuts through rain and low cloud, and the mood in the carriages is nothing like last year. Parents linger on the platform too long, hands tight on trunks, eyes on the scarred boy in yellow and black. Letters from the summer sit heavy in pockets and bags, lines about rumours about an old legend waking in the walls. Harry walks the corridor slowly, listening. He hears it in snatches: Chamber of Secrets, Heir of Slytherin, attacks on Muggleborns. He grew up in that world, the non-magical one, and now he belongs to the house that takes everyone. The overlap feels like a target painted on his chest. In the great hall, the Sorting Hat sings a darker song: unity, watchfulness, old dangers. The candles seem lower. At the Hufflepuff table, the benches are crowded, pressed in. There are more Muggleborns here, more half-bloods, more students whose parents work in shops and offices rather than at the ministry. The house that never turned anyone away is suddenly the most exposed piece on the board. Slytherin notices first. They always do. A tall boy in green passes their table and sneers, voice pitched, just loud enough. Mudblood house, first to fall. A few others laugh, brittle and sharp. It is not clever, not even original, but it lands. Harry feels the words hit like a hex, not at him alone, but at the whole table. By the second week, the insult has spread. In corridors, whispered behind hands. In the library, a Ravenclaw girl quietly shifts her books away from a Hufflepuff Muggleborn. At breakfast, a pure-blood father's letter is read over pumpkin juice. Sit with your year, darling, and for now, avoid the badger table. No need to draw attention. The student reading it looks over at Sprout's house and then looks down again. A few frightened Hufflepuffs ask the question no one wants to say aloud. Could they transfer? Maybe to Ravenclaw, where blood matters less, or even to Gryffindor, where Harry would have gone. Sprout's answer is gentle but firm. The hat placed you true. Running will not change the legend. Harry hears all of it. Every slur, every joke, every careful parental instruction to step away from his people. He has been planning this year in his head since June, thinking about Quidditch and classes and maybe convincing Hermione's parents to visit a magical match. Instead, he is counting which of his friends have Muggle parents, which corridors are most often empty. Hufflepuff adapts. Older students begin walking first years to class in pairs, as if it is only kindness, but their eyes are always moving. In the common room, an informal watch schedule appears, not on parchment, but in who happens to be up late, who just decides to study by the entrance. Sprout announces extra herbology projects, extended greenhouse hours, more chances to work with rare plants. Everyone understands these are also chances to gather, to look around, and quietly check that everyone is still there. Hermione joins those sessions whenever she can, hovering at the edge of yellow and black, her tie still red and gold. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. They are building something, even if they do not yet know its name. Then the first attack comes. The corridor is cordoned off, teachers grim-faced. A Hufflepuff second-year Muggle-born lies rigid on a stretcher, eyes wide and glassy. Harry follows to the hospital wing, heart hammering, the world narrowing to the pale hand, dangling off the side. He stands there as Madame Pomfrey works, as Sprout's jaw clenches, as Dumbledore's face settles into lines more than any description could contain. This is not a puzzle about pipes and monsters anymore. It is a strike at the house that welcomed him, at the idea that anyone can belong. In that white, potion-scented room, Harry understands, whoever opened the chamber is not just hunting Muggle-borns, they are trying to break Hufflepuff itself. He looks at the still figure on the bed and makes a quiet promise. He has been planning this without realizing it. Every friendship, every late-night walk, every whispered strategy in the common room. The badgers will not break. And somewhere beneath them, the castle listens, waiting for his next move. The castle is holding its breath, not the whole castle. Down in the Hufflepuff basement, the air feels thick but steady, like earth that has settled around roots and refuses to move. The barrels sit in their quiet row, unremarkable, smelling faintly of hops and damp stone. Harry stands facing them, hand hovering over the correct lid, listening to the distant echo of whispers about the chamber. He has been planning this without quite naming it. Every time he watched older students tap out the rhythm, every time he counted steps from the Great Hall, he was building a map in his head. Now that map becomes a defense plan. The entrance is low, awkward, easy to flood with students and furniture if needed. The basement corridors twist like burrows. There is only one real way in. At the next house meeting, he looks at the prefects, at Cedric, at Hannah, and Ernie. He explains what he sees, a choke point, defensible ground, the fact that no one has ever broken into the Hufflepuff common room because you cannot guess a rhythm you have never heard. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is not about glory. This is about making sure no one dies on the way to breakfast. What was once casual habit becomes schedule. Justin and Susan take first watch by the barrels after dinner, books open, pretending to revise. Cedric and the fifth years claim the late slot. Harry volunteers for dawn, when the corridors are emptiest and fear feels largest. They do not stand like guards, they sit, they read, they talk, but they count who comes and goes. They know everything that moves near their door. The link to the kitchens changes from a convenience into a quiet lifeline. Harry walks in with Sprout's written permission, speaks to the house elves with the same grave politeness he used at Gringotts. He asks them to watch certain corridors, to send word if they see students alone, to keep food flowing even if the Great Hall must close. The elves nod, eyes wide, delighted to be entrusted with something so serious. The buddy system begins as a suggestion and hardens into rule. No one walks alone, not to lessons, not to the library, not even to the loo after curfew. Other houses laugh. Paranoid badgers, they mutter. Harry lets them. Under the jokes is something else. People start asking casually if a Hufflepuff is heading their way. The emotional weight lands hardest on the first years. Some nights, half a dozen of them drag blankets and pillows into the common room, building nests near the fire. Sprout pretends not to notice, then quietly adds more cushions. Older students sit up with them, telling stories of Helga Hufflepuff taking anyone who needed refuge, wizard or muggle-born, rich or poor, promising that her hearth would be the last place in the castle to fall. Elsewhere, the responses fracture. Gryffindors chafe at curfews, sneaking out and getting caught, their courage turning restless and sharp. Slytherin corridors are full of low voices. Some wear their pure-blood pride like armour, others flinch at every hiss in the pipes. Ravenclaws bury themselves in books, theories of ancient monsters piled high, answers chased, but never quite caught. And slowly, almost without announcement, Hufflepuff becomes something else. A place where a frightened second year from any house can sit by the fire, and no one asks for a password, only a name. A place where a muggle-born who has received a cruel letter from home finds 3 different kinds of biscuit waiting by their plate. Late one evening, as Harry finishes his watch, there is a soft knock on the barrel. Not the rhythm, just knuckles against wood. He freezes, then lifts the lid a fraction. A Ravenclaw girl stands there, eyes red, bag clutched to her chest. "I'm muggle-born," she whispers. Would it be allowed if I stayed here tonight?" He looks at her. She looks at him. The whole world seems to narrow to the space between his hand and the barrel. Harry taps out the rhythm, swings the lid wide, and steps back to let her in. Behind her, in the dark corridor, something moves, or seems to. He straightens, every sense reaching outward, and realizes this will not be the last knock he hears. The hall is bright and echoing and full of wands. December. The dueling club. Harry stands in the middle of the great hall, not as Gryffindor's golden boy, but as Hufflepuff's quiet centre of gravity. Lockhart is talking too loudly, robes billowing, while Snape watches with that thin, disapproving line of a mouth. Harry's palms are damp. He has not been planning this. He has been planning to stay in the second row, to watch, to learn, to walk back to the cellar corridors with his house and laugh about Lockhart's theatrics. Instead, Lockhart's hand lands on his shoulder. Our famous Mr. Potter and Mr. Malfoy, I think, marvellous contrast. A Gryffindor murmurs, disappointed they were not chosen. A Slytherin smirks. The Hufflepuff table goes very still. Harry can feel Sprout's eyes on his back like a steadying hand. He steps up onto the platform opposite Draco, and it feels like stepping into a story that was meant for someone else. Wands raised, bow. The first spells are textbook, almost polite. Expelliarmus traded for a stinging jinx. Little flares of light that make first years gasp. Draco's eyes flick to Snape, then sharpen. He flicks his wand with more intent. Serpensortia. The snake hits the polished floor with a heavy, wet sound. It coils, lifts its head, tongue tasting the air. The room pulls back as one. Harry feels his magic surge, old and cold and instinctive. Before he can think, he hears himself. Stop. Leave him alone." But the words aren't English. They slide out in hissing syllables that curl around the snake like ropes. The creature stills, then lowers its head, obedient, watching him. Silence. Not the usual Hogwarts hush, but something thinner, stretched. Students who thought of Hufflepuff as the safe table, the soft landing, now see its most famous badger speaking the language of Slytherin and the whispered air. A second year in yellow and black actually steps behind his friend, using her as a shield. A Ravenclaw boy whispers, "Did you see his mouth?" Lockhart blusters. Snape intervenes, vanishing the snake with a sharp gesture. The spell cracks the moment, but not the gaze that follows Harry as he walks off the platform. He looks at Hermione. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is worse than the rumours about the chamber. This is proof, to some eyes, that the danger might sit at the Hufflepuff table. The fallout comes fast. In the cellar common room, the firelight shows small movements. A first year shifting his chair a little farther away, a girl who usually borrows Harry's notes suddenly remembering she has her own. Others move closer instead. Ernie Macmillan plants himself at Harry's side like a declaration. Hannah offers him a chocolate frog without quite meeting his eyes. That night Sprout calls them together. No lecture, no points, just the whole house packed into the low, warm room that smells of earth and herbs. She looks tired, soil still under her nails from the greenhouses. "You all saw what happened," she says. "You heard what he spoke. You also know Harry. You know who has studied with you, walked to lessons with you, helped you repot shrivel figs." Her gaze sweeps the room. Hufflepuff does not throw away its own because the world is frightened of what it does not understand. Her words settle like compost on cold ground, heavy, necessary, not enough. Harry lies awake later, staring at the curved ceiling. He feels as if he has spilled ink across the one place that ever felt like a clean page. He thinks about asking to sit at the edge of the room, to stop answering questions in class, to become smaller, so the stain does not spread to them. He has been planning conversations in his head all week, apologies that do not have the right words. Cedric stops him in the corridor before breakfast. "No," he says simply, reading Harry's intent before he speaks. "You don't hide for us." That's not how this works. An hour later, Tonks, hair bright, Hufflepuff yellow, leans over the back of his chair and mutters, "If anyone wants to hex you, they go through me first. Fair's fair." There is warmth in it, and iron. Loyalty, he realizes, is not a one-way shield. It is a circle drawn on the floor that everyone steps into together. Later, when the common room has thinned, Harry hears it. A whisper. Not meant for him. "What if the air is one of us?" The words land like a stone in water, ripples touching every corner of the room. In that instant he understands something cold. Because Hufflepuff opens its doors to everyone, they are both the easiest targets and, in some eyes, the most suspicious. The chamber is still closed, but the real cracks are already spreading through the house that promised to hold him. And somewhere, in the pipes, something listens. The chamber is open and full of whispers. May, second year. The hospital wing smells of potions and fear. Another student, a tiny Hufflepuff first year named Priya Shah, lies frozen beside Hermione, Colin, Justin. Muggle-born, badger scarf folded neatly at the foot of her bed. Harry looks at her, then at Ginny's empty bed, sheets stripped back, pillow bare. Two absences that feel like doors torn out of their frames. He has been planning this without quite admitting it to himself. collecting rumours, watching the walls, tracing the pipes with his eyes while other people looked at the ceiling for monsters. But when McGonagall's voice breaks in the Great Hall and she says, "Miss Weasley has been taken," the careful lines in his head snap tight. A Hufflepuff child and a Weasley girl, his house and his friend. The danger stops being a legend and becomes a ledger, with names he knows. In Lockhart's office, when the chance finally appears, he refuses to repeat the pattern everyone expects. Not this time. Not alone. Ron is already there, red-faced, furious, ready to rush in, but Harry shakes his head. "I'm going," he says, "but I'm not going by myself. If we don't come back, someone has to know where it is, what it is." He looks at her. She looks at him. Hannah Abbott stands in the doorway, trembling and stubborn, having followed him from the common room because Priya is her dorm mate, and she cannot sit still while the world under their feet cracks. A moment of understanding passes between them. Hufflepuff does not send one badger into a snake's den. They go in groups. So they walk together, Harry, Ron, Hannah, down to Myrtle's bathroom through the hissed-open sink, into the dark slide that smells of damp stone and old fear. Harry has a satchel pressed tight to his side, not just a wand and luck this time, but small vials and wrapped leaves, bezoars, dittany, a crude anti-venom sprout drilled into them after the first attack. Protective charms inked on parchment, copied from Sprout's notes, folded 3 times. His bravery is not a leap, it is a list. He has been planning this too, how to get them out, how to mark the path with chalk and lumos burns, how to keep Hannah between him and Ron, so neither is left at the back for long. In the chamber itself, Riddle's shade looks almost amused to see more than one child. It does not last. Harry's fury is quieter this time, anchored in Priya's still hand and Ginny's missing shoes. When the basilisk comes, when the air fills with scales and death, Harry does not tell them to run and leave him. He shouts for them to stay behind the fallen statue, to keep eyes closed, to listen for his voice. His refusal to abandon them is the point where the story bends. Loyalty, not glory. The moment he chooses them over any chance at solitary heroism, Fawkes bursts into the chamber in a rain of feathers and song. The sorting hat follows, absurd and solemn, landing between them. They look at each other. Then Harry grabs the hat, pulls the sword, and moves not as a lone knight, but as the tip of a formation that has already decided no one dies alone. When it is over, when the basilisk lies still, and Ginny wakes choking on apologies, they do not emerge from the chamber as a single legend. They come back as a small, limping procession. Ron supporting Ginny, Hannah half carrying Harry, Fawkes circling above like a living torch. The story that spreads through Hogwarts afterward is not just about the boy who lived facing a monster. It is about Hufflepuff sending one of their own into the dark and making sure he did not walk it by himself. And somewhere in staff meetings and common rooms, people begin to say a new thing in low voices, that the house everyone underestimated is the one that would not leave its muggle-borns behind, even when the pipes themselves tried to swallow them. The train is cold long before the sweets trolley comes, a breath of winter in September, a shiver that does not belong. Harry looks up from his chocolate frog card and knows before anyone says the word that something is wrong. Third year begins under a shadow, not just whispers about Sirius Black, not just the prophet headlines passed from hand to hand, but the knowledge that Hogwarts itself is no longer simply home. It is a fortress under siege. For Hufflepuff, a house built on the promise that the common room is safe and the kettle is always on, the sight of Dementors gliding along the lake is an insult more than any description could contain. They arrive on the train first, the lamps dim, ice crawls over the windows. Around him, second years and first years press, closer on the benches. One girl from his dorm, May, starts to sob without sound. Harry folds in on himself as the screaming in his head rises, as the world narrows to green light and a woman's voice. When he wakes on the floor, the looks that meet him are not mocking. They are scared. They are young. They are asking, silently, if the boy who lived is not safe. Who is? He has been planning this, he realizes later, without knowing it. Every time he walked a lost first year back to the barrels, every time he sat up late with a homesick muggle-born and a mug of cocoa. Hufflepuff has been teaching him that safety is something you make, not something you are given. So when Lupin offers to teach him the Patronus, Harry does not think first of Quidditch. He thinks of May on the train. He thinks of the way the whole table goes quiet when the temperature drops. In empty classrooms, he learns to stand his ground against the cold. Expecto Patronum is not a daredevil spell here. It is a shield he is desperate to raise over other people. Lupin watches him fail and fail again, and sees a boy who is not chasing glory, but trying to outpace his own memories so they do not swallow anyone else. Hermione sits in the corner with notes and questions, quietly timing his attempts, quietly refusing to let him give up. When the truth about Sirius Black breaks open, it does not come as a clean cut. It comes in pieces, a map, a rat, a shack that smells of dust and old fear. Harry's first reaction is raw, familiar rage. 13 years in a cupboard, 13 years of whispers about betrayal, and here is the man they all blamed. But Hufflepuff has also given him Professor Sprout, who talks in staff room tones about justice and soil, about how punishment that does not fit the truth poisons everything it touches. He looks at her. She looks at him. After one long conversation in her office, surrounded by pufferpods and the quiet drip of watering charms, Harry walks away with a question lodged like a stone in his chest. If they were wrong about Black, how many others has the system ground under without listening? So in the hospital wing, when Dumbledore hints at turning back time, what might have been a Gryffindor charge becomes something else. Hermione's hands shake around the time turner, but her voice is steady as she lists what they are really doing. Not just saving a friend, not just rescuing a hippogriff, but correcting a record, refusing to let an innocent man be kissed by creatures that should never have been near a school. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is about more than them. They walk the night, like ghosts. Buckbeak's feathers are rough under Harry's fingers. Sirius's eyes, when he looks back from the hippogriff's neck, are stunned, grateful, already half in flight. Harry feels the weight of it, not vengeance, but reprieve. Later, by the lake, he faces the ring of Dementors and calls his Patronus, not because he wants to prove he can, but because somewhere behind him, in beds and dormitories and a low-ceilinged common room, there are children who will never even know how close the darkness came. The silver shape that bursts from his wand is born of every late-night promise he has made to himself that no one else will feel as helpless as he once did. When the Dementors finally leave Hogwarts, driven away by political embarrassment and quiet pressure, Harry stands with his house at the window. The lake is calm again. The air is only ordinary cold. Hufflepuff's banners hang still and bright. He understands, with a clarity that surprises him, that his house has been shaping his answers to an unspoken question. Who deserves protection? Not just the famous, not just the brave, the falsely accused, the misunderstood beast, the child who cannot yet cast a Patronus. In a world that sent soul-sucking guards to watch over school children, Hufflepuff's stubborn insistence on safety and fairness has been its own kind of rebellion. And Harry, who once thought survival was a lonely act, is starting to know that mercy can be planned for, trained toward, defended like any other border. The war ahead will test that. The rain is coming in sideways, needling his face, blurring the world into grey and gold. Second year. Hufflepuff practice pitch. Cedric Diggory is hovering 10 feet away, not racing, not showing off, just watching Harry hold a borrowed comet, as if it might vanish. First thing, Cedric says, voice steady over the wind, you're not here to be a hero. You're here to be part of a pattern. He gestures at the others circling below. Chasers running, passing drills. Beaters trading bats between them. Keeper tracking every movement with quiet focus. Cedric has been planning this, Harry realizes. Not just a practice, but an introduction. Roles, responsibilities, the way a clean game can be its own kind of victory. Hufflepuff doesn't promise him instant stardom, it promises him vocabulary. Marking, screening, drawing a foul and choosing not to take it. Cedric talks about how Helga Hufflepuff valued fair play, how their house would rather lose clean than win dirty, and how that is not softness, but discipline. Harry listens, fingers flexing around the broom handle, feeling something in him align with that stubborn, almost defiant idea of fairness. Matches against Slytherin prove how costly that choice can be. The green and silver team still plays the same way, obstructing lines of sight, nudging just a bit too hard in a scrum. A beater's bat, swinging a fraction too low. Only now, their primary target is the soft house's seeker. Harry is smaller, slighter, wrapped in yellow that the Slytherins mock from the stands. He learns to take a hit, to get back on the broom, to look to his beaters not as bodyguards, but as partners. Gryffindor is different. The first time he faces them, the stadium feels split down its spine. Red and gold banners wave beside yellow and black. Some Gryffindors cheer when he dives, others fall abruptly silent when he pulls ahead of their seeker. Ron sits in the stands, jaw tight, hands shoved into his pockets. Hermione watches from beside him, eyes flicking between Harry and the rulebook in her lap. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them that is more than any description could contain. As years pass, Harry becomes captain, and Hufflepuff's practices change. He schedules extra sessions, but they are not punishment. They are habits. Passing drills where everyone rotates positions so even first years feel what it is to chase, to keep, to seek. Strategy meetings where he asks the quietest player for their read of the opposing team. He has been planning this too, in a different way. A team that will not fall apart if one star is injured. A house that will not hinge its pride on a single boy. The pivotal match comes in fourth year against Slytherin under a sky the colour of old parchment. Hufflepuff is ahead by 10. The snitch glitters near the Slytherin goalposts, temptingly close. Harry leans in, feels the broom respond, then hears the crack. One of his chasers, Megan, spins out, broom jolting sideways from an illegal bludger hit. She is falling. The whistle does not come. The Slytherin beater looks away, feigning innocence. Harry could end it now, catch the snitch, seal the win. Instead, he pulls up hard, lungs burning, and shouts for time, for a foul on his own play because he'd been too focused on the snitch to call it earlier. The stadium stutters into confusion, even the referee hesitates. Hermione will later tell him there was no obligation, that he could have taken the victory and filed a complaint after. But in that moment, Harry only knows one thing. A win bought with someone else's pain is not a win Hufflepuff wants. The foul is finally called. The Slytherin beater is penalised. Meghan is escorted off the pitch, shaken but alive. Harry leaves the snitch hovering where it is, refuses to chase it until he sees her raise a hand from the stretcher, thumb lifted in a wobbly sign that she is all right. Only then does he dive, clean and sure, to end the game. The Daily Prophet will write about it. Some will sneer at his sentimentality, but something shifts. In corridors and common rooms, younger students repeat the story in low, awed voices, how Hufflepuff chose fairness over an easy triumph. By sixth year, the stands look different. When Hufflepuff executes a perfectly timed passing chain, keeper to chaser to goal, the quaffle arcing like a piece of choreography, cheers rise not just from the yellow section but from Ravenclaw blue, from scattered pockets of red. Even a few Slytherins clap once, sharply, then stop, as if they have surprised themselves. Harry circles high above, watching his team move as one, not a house of duffers, a house that has made integrity its tactic. In the roar that follows a particularly beautiful play when the stadium forgets itself and simply admires what it has seen, Harry understands that Hufflepuff has done something harder than winning a cup. It has changed how the school keeps score. And somewhere beyond the pitch, where prophecies and dark lords wait, that lesson about what victory means is already taking root. The hall is bright and loud and full of colour. October 1994. Foreign banners hang where house crests used to be. Beauxbatons blue, Durmstrang red, the deep gold and black of Hufflepuff threaded through it all because Sprout has quietly worked with the elves, because the Badgers have decided they will not be outshone in their own school. The world has come to Hogwarts, and everyone keeps looking at the boy who made Hufflepuff a Quidditch power. Harry walks in with his house robes a little ink-stained from late-night strategy notes, hair still damp from the cold air off the lake. He looks at the goblet the way he once looked at the vault doors of Gringotts, as something old, enchanted, indifferent. He has been planning this year as a year of quiet, no basilisk, no stone, just lessons, Quidditch, and the odd bit of advanced ward theory with Hermione. Instead, he gets fire. The goblet spits blue-white flame, names on charred parchment, Victor Crumb, Fleur Delacour. Each announcement pulls the hall's attention outward, toward distant schools and polished prodigies. Then Dumbledore calls, "The Hogwarts champion is Cedric Diggory." And the whole room pivots back to one table. Hufflepuff erupts, feet pound on the floor. Cedric's friends slam their goblets together, pumpkin juice sloshing. Sprout looks like she might cry. This is what they have been working toward without saying it aloud, proof that hard work and quiet excellence can stand on the same stage as international stars. Then the fire flares again. The extra scrap of parchment looks ordinary. The name on it does not. Harry Potter. Silence drops like a ward. For a breath, no one moves. The underdog house, the one that jokes about being overlooked, now holds both Hogwarts champions. Gryffindor stares. Slytherin recalculates. Ravenclaw's benches fill with a scratch of quills as someone starts a list of possible rituals and loopholes. Inside Hufflepuff, the quiet is sharper. Some faces close. One boy Harry has studied plays with for 2 years does the math out loud, the famous Seeker, again at the centre. Again the story bends around him. Did he steal Cedric's moment? Did the magical world choose him over them, even here? Others sit straighter, 2 champions in yellow and black. Maybe this is not theft. Maybe it is recognition overdue and undeniable. Cedric feels both truths at once, pride, then a small mean sting he hates himself for. He looks at Harry, she looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. Harry breaks first. "Cedric's the real Hogwarts champion," he says that night, loudly enough for the common room to hear. He refuses to sit apart at meals, refuses the idea of private coaching unless Cedric is invited too. When Bagman tries to flatter him in a corridor, Harry answers with practiced Hufflepuff stubbornness, "We do this fair, or we don't do it." He has been planning this conversation with his house since the goblet. Apology first, explanation second, then the offer. They train together. They share notes. They win or lose as one banner. Foreign eyes watch. Beauxbaton students whisper about the boy who could have been a Gryffindor star and instead chose loyalty. Durmstrang staff take in the way the Hufflepuff table either closes ranks around its two champions or fractures. They know something Voldemort has not yet remembered to ask. When a school's most famous student sits among the Badgers, does that house become a shield or a fault line? The common room is too bright, too full. Laughter pressed thin over shock. The fire snaps as if it knows something has broken. Later, when the others drift upstairs, Cedric waits. Harry does too. They look at each other across a table scattered with butterbeer corks and abandoned chess pieces. Cedric walks over, every prefect badge and Quidditch captain instinct telling him to fix this, to make it fair, in a world that rarely is. "First," Cedric says, voice low, "you don't owe me an apology." Harry looks down anyway at his hands, at the house colours he chose, now suddenly heavy. "I didn't put my name in," he says. "I know you know that, but I'm sorry it's you paying for it." Cedric studies him, Hufflepuff's golden boy and the boy who lived, both trapped in one unfair magical contract. "If we let them make this a competition inside the house," Cedric says slowly, "we lose before the first task starts." He has been planning this conversation since the goblet spat blue-white fire a second time. Not the spells, not the glory, the politics of a house that could fracture. "We stand together," he finishes, "or they pull us apart." A moment of understanding passes between them. Harry nods. It is simple, and it is everything. The pact begins small. Cedric brings old spellbooks, the ones he has annotated in tiny, neat handwriting. Shield variations, silent casting drills, water conjuration charms he copied from a 7th year. Harry brings rumours, snippets overheard from Moody, the way McGonagall looked at the dragon's paddock, the fact that Bagman smiles too widely when he thinks no one is watching. They go to Professor Sprout together. She looks at them over a tray of Flutterby bushes, soil under her nails, eyes sharp. "You want herbology for dragon fighting," she says, not surprised, not mocking. "Or lake diving," Harry adds, "or maze walking. We don't know everything yet." Sprout considers them, then the greenhouse. "Plants bind, plants blind, plants protect," she says. "If Hufflepuff is sending 2 champions, Hufflepuff will send them prepared." Training becomes a rhythm. Cedric drilling advanced spells until Harry's arm shakes. Harry pushing Cedric to improvise, to cast sideways, to use conjured vines as whips and shield anchors. Sprout teaches them to coax Snargaluff pods into defensive bursts, to weave Devil's Snare into controlled nets instead of wild strangling coils. In the first task, the difference shows. Cedric walks in with a plan built on weeks of methodical practice. Transfigure boulders into hounds, send them circling, use smoke conjuration and Sprout's flash seed pellets to blind the dragon. Harry watches, learns, adjusts. When his turn comes, he rides the broom, yes, but he also lashes the dragon's foreclaws with living ropes of enchanted ivy. buying seconds that his canon self never had. The second task cuts deeper. When they decode the clue, together, late at night, Cedric steady over the text, Harry quick with the leaps, neither of them accepts the premise. Leave one hostage per champion. Leave anyone. Hufflepuff does not leave people behind. It is not a slogan. It is the way the house sits with the lonely first year, the way they walked Harry in among them his first night. So they plan. Cedric practices bubblehead charms on pumpkins in the lake shallows. Harry drills cutting and warming charms. Sprout gives them kelp that glows faintly gold, tether lines that will not snap. Under the water their strategies mesh, Cedric's precise swimming patterns, Harry's reckless speed, the shared tethers. They free their own hostages first, then go back. Crumbs, Fleur's little sister. No one is left on the chain when the merpeople finally push them upward. The school notices. It starts with Hufflepuff, of course, no turned backs, no badges against Harry. Instead, they close ranks around both champions, a quiet wall of yellow and black. Then, one morning, a Gryffindor tie with a thin yellow ribbon knotted at the end, a Ravenclaw scarf with a badger pin. Small things. Enough. The judges call it foolish heroics. The students call it something else. By the time the maze grows in the third task, their pact is no longer strategy. It is identity. The cup glows at the centre like a promise. They argue briefly about who should take it. Cedric for being older, Harry for dragging the world's attention like a curse. So we both do, Cedric says at last. Hufflepuff answer to a Hufflepuff problem. They look at each other, fingers close around the handle together. The pull behind his navel is stronger than any portkey Harry has ever imagined. Somewhere far away, in a graveyard that smells of damp stone and old magic, Voldemort smiles. He has been planning this. Cold stone, wet grass, the world slams back into being. Harry hits the graveyard on his knees, hand still locked around the cup, Cedric's weight crashing into his shoulder. The portkey glow dies. The night is suddenly too quiet. They don't speak. They move. Months of drills in the Hufflepuff basement take over, twist, rise, back to back, wands out. Harry feels Cedric's spine against his, solid, familiar, more reassuring than any wall. A yew tree, tilted gravestones, the air smells of damp earth and something older. Cedric turns slowly, covering the left arc. Harry takes the right. They have practiced this with cushions and wooden dummies, and Tonks laughing when they tripped over each other. No laughter now. "Who's there?" Cedric calls, voice steady in a way that makes Harry's chest tighten. Not brave like a Gryffindor charge, steady like a Hufflepuff line that refuses to break. The answer is a high, cold voice Harry knows from dreams. Wormtail steps from the shadows, cradling a bundle. A cauldron waits beside a headstone that reads, Tom Riddle. The letters look carved out of the night itself. Harry's scar burns. His knees want to buckle. He doesn't. Cedric's elbow presses back. A tiny nudge. "I'm here. Stay up." The ritual is a blur of motion and pain and smoke. Bone of the father, flesh of the servant, blood of the enemy. Harry's blood hisses when it hits the potion. The bundle sinks. What rises is wrong in every line of its body and every calm, delighted breath. Voldemort looks at him, then at Cedric. Yellow and black on both of their robes, darkened by dirt. "So," he says softly, "the boy who lived, and the spare, Helga's little loyalists." The word twists, half mockery, half curiosity. How touching. The house that takes everyone, the house that works hard and dies quietly. You bring me two for the price of one. He has been planning this, Harry thinks, but not like this. The Death Eaters appear in a rush of masks and cloaks, circling, laughing. Voldemort walks among them as if in a garden, speaking of loyalty as if it is a joke, of promises as chains, of how Hufflepuff bred servants while Slytherin bred rulers. Each word is a knife aimed at everything Sprout ever praised. Then the pattern breaks. "Kill the spare," he says. In canon, Cedric dies before Harry can move. Here, Harry has been planning something else. Sprout's voice in his head. "If you cannot win, buy time." Tonks's grin. "Trip them, blind them, make them miss." Harry shouts, "Protego Maxima," and throws himself sideways into Cedric. The curse hits the shield like a hammer. It cracks. It holds for a heartbeat longer than anyone expects. Long enough for Cedric to roll, for dust and stone to explode instead of bone. Cedric lives, but the cost is immediate. Another curse slams into his leg. He screams, goes down hard. Harry's own wand hand is shaking. He could run. Hufflepuffs do not run. Voldemort steps forward, amused. Not a lion after all, hiding, shielding, scrambling in the dirt. Using cover. Harry pants, ducking behind a tomb, like anyone who wants to live. The duel is not a dance of flashy curses. It is Harry dragging stone between them, casting smokescreen charms, throwing up Hufflepuff yellow shielding webs Sprout made them practice until their arms ached. He aims not to defeat Voldemort, but to stall him, to keep Cedric breathing, to make every second cost. When their wands finally lock, Priori Incantatem is not a sudden miracle. It is the last, desperate holding action of a boy who has been buying time since he landed. Golden light, voices, figures, they are more than any description could contain. Harry feels his parents, and behind him he feels Cedric dragging himself upright, using a broken tomb as crutch, refusing to leave. "On 3. Cedric whispers. "We go together." A moment of understanding passes between them. Loyalty, not glory. Survival, not spectacle. They wrench free, grab the cup, and the graveyard vanishes. Back at Hogwarts, they arrive not as a lone hero and a corpse, but as 2 Hufflepuffs collapsed in a tangle of blood and stone dust. Cedric's leg is ruined. Harry's eyes are wild. The hall looks at the yellow on their robes and understands, dimly, that the war has come for the house everyone underestimated. Voldemort is back, and so are the Badgers. Somewhere in the staff table's shadows, Sprout's hands are already curling into fists, planning for a different kind of battle. The common room is too quiet. Not silent, never silent. There are muffled sobs from the corner by the barrels, a whispered argument near the notice board, the soft, relentless crackle of the fire chewing through logs as if it can burn the night away. Yellow and black blankets are wrapped around shoulders, hands are wrapped around hands. Cedric's bed in the 4th-year boys' room is empty, or he is in it. Legs splintered and spelled, sleeping with potions, dragging him under. Either way, the absence hangs over the room like fog. Sprout walks slowly through her house, not as head of house, but as gardener, in a storm-damaged greenhouse, checking each plant for broken stems. She pauses by one cluster of first years, one of them crying so hard he can barely breathe, and just rests a hand on his shoulder until the sobs turn to shivers. Then she moves on. Again. Again. Tonks does not stand apart. She sits cross-legged on the rug, back against a low table, hair a dull, grieving brown. A 5th year is curled against her side. Cedric's friend from the Quidditch team, fingers twisted in Tonks's sleeve, as if she is an anchor. Tonks keeps her voice low, steady, telling them what it is like when an aura raid goes wrong, when you come back and someone else does not. The words are blunt, not comforting, but honest in a way Hufflepuffs understand. At first, it is only grief, wet cheeks, blank stares, someone staring into the fire and whispering over and over. He was just trying to be fair. He waited for Harry. Then the questions start. What happened in the maze, what Harry saw in the graveyard, what Cedric said when they landed back on the grass, or when Madame Pomfrey and Sprout and Tonks reached them. The story moves from cluster to cluster, changing in small details but never in its bones. Voldemort returned. Harry and Cedric were taken. Someone killed, or nearly killed. A name that had been a history book shadow now has blood and bone and screaming attached to it. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. The world has shifted. The Badgers are on the front line now, whether they asked for it or not. Anger comes next. Quiet, mostly. A vow whispered between two girls who share a bed because neither can sleep alone tonight. A third year pressing his palm flat against the stone wall and saying he does not get another Hufflepuff, not one. Harry feels it like a weight pressing down on his chest. He sits on the edge of a sofa, shoulders hunched, hands locked together until the knuckles ache. Every time someone looks at him with that mix of horror and fierce loyalty, the guilt spikes. He has been planning this in his head already, how to pull away, how to keep them safe by staying alone. Hermione sees it. She walks straight over, drops onto the sofa beside him, hard enough that the cushions bounce. He looks at her. She looks at him. No speeches, just "Don't you dare," under her breath. The nearest Hufflepuffs here, one of them a second year who still mixes up potion ingredients, says, voice shaking but firm, "We chose you, Harry, you're not." A curse. "You're ours." Heads nod all around the room. No one looks away. Outside this underground sanctuary, the Ministry starts its denial. By morning, Fudge will be on the wireless insisting that you-know-who is not back, that it was all confusion, that Harry is unstable, that Dumbledore is overreacting. He will not come down here. He will not see the way Cedric's friends flinch when anyone says maze, or how Harry's hands tremble when he reaches for a cup of tea. But dozens of Hufflepuffs saw the state of their champions when they returned. They heard the story from Harry, from Cedric if he lives, from Tonks's low professional questions and Sprout's white-knuckled silence. Loyalty is their default. They know when someone is lying, and it is not the boy who can barely say the word graveyard without choking. By dawn, the fire has burned low. Students doze in clumps, blankets and limbs tangled, as if proximity itself is a ward. Sprout stands in the doorway and looks back once, memorizing the sight, more than any description could contain. In the great hall, the Hufflepuff hourglass catches the first thin line of morning light. Yellow stones glint like trapped sunbeams. Today, more students from other houses stand near it than at any other table, not touching, just present. A silent acknowledgement that the Badgers at last stand at the heart of the fight. Pink lace. The smell of sickly sweet tea and something scorched. September. Umbridge's first speech drips through the great hall like poison disguised as honey. Harry sits at the Hufflepuff table, shoulders tight, listening to words about order and proper authority that somehow never once say justice or care. Around him, Badgers who grew up on Helga's story of taking everyone in, of feeding the lost and the frightened, look at one another with quiet alarm. He has been planning this year in vague outlines only. Newty-level defence, more honest talks with Dumbledore, some way to keep Cedric's name from fading. Instead, he watches a woman in a cardigan of weaponized pink announce that theory will replace practice, that the world outside is safe if they simply obey. He knows, with the cold certainty of someone who has seen a body fall, that she is lying. The first detentions make it plain. Not with him, not yet. With a nervous second-year Hufflepuff who stammers in class, with a muggle-born Ravenclaw who asks too many questions, with a half-goblin Slytherin boy whose Gringotts-employed mother sent a letter of complaint last year. Umbridge's smile never wavers as she carves warnings into skin, as she calls them disruptive elements and half-breeds and troublemakers. In the Hufflepuff common room, beneath low ceilings and warm lamps, the house gathers. Sprout's face is grave. She looks at Harry, she looks at the room. "We look after our own," she says, "and anyone else who needs it." A moment of understanding passes between them. The DA does not begin as a grand rebellion. It begins as a study group with the door firmly shut. Hannah Abbott shaking as she describes her detention, Justin Finch-Fletchley rolling up his sleeve, Ernie Macmillan, voice tight, asking Harry to show them how he stayed alive. He walks to the centre of the room, heart pounding, and says they will start with shields, with dodging, with how to get out of a room when someone stronger wants to keep you in. He has been planning this, he realises, ever since the graveyard. Word moves sideways rather than loud. A Hufflepuff cousin tells a Gryffindor, a Ravenclaw prefect, Harry, once helped in the library, asks if a few of her younger housemates might quietly attend. Even a Slytherin girl whose brother works at the bank slips in one evening, eyes wary, asking if this is only for your lot. Harry meets her gaze and says simply, "No one faces her alone." The room of requirement answers when the common room grows too small. Tonight it looks like a long, low-ceilinged hall with cushions stacked against walls, shelves of bandages and potions, blankets folded in neat piles, a table with tea and biscuits. More refuge than barracks, more than any description could contain. Lessons carry a Hufflepuff shape. Protego drilled until arms ache. Paired escapes through conjured obstacles, simple healing charms taught by a quiet sixth year who wants to be a healer. Group formations where no one stands as a lone hero. They move as interlocking circles, each person covering another's blind spot. Before every meeting, Harry asks the same question. Who's been targeted this week? Names are spoken. Plans are made. Someone walks younger students to class. Someone else copies notes for those banned from lessons. Hermione, sitting cross-legged near the blankets, suggests a rota, and he nods, grateful. He listens more now, lets others lead where they are strongest. He looks at her. She looks at him. They look at each other, and he knows this is not about glory. It is a promise. Umbridge feels something slipping. Corridors fall silent when she passes, not in fear, but in coordination. Homework appears done despite her restrictions. Rumours of study circles reach her, but they sound like ordinary mischief, like children being children. She cannot see the pattern yet. She cannot see the badger tunnels under her feet. Not until something forces them to the surface. The first sign is almost invisible, a Ravenclaw scarf draped over a Hufflepuff armchair, a Slytherin textbook left on a low table near the fire. By October, Harry has a map of Hogwarts that no parchment could show. Not corridors and staircases, but people. Badgers first. Ernie's precise notes, Hannah's quiet steadiness, Susan's sharp questions. He walks with them from class to class, learns who panics before exams, who always has spare ink, who will stay up late to explain a charm one more time. This is his core, the circle that sees him tired, sees him angry, sees him trying anyway. Gryffindor is not lost to him, only shifted. Ron still slumps beside him in the library complaining about homework, while his quill keeps moving. Hermione still appears with a stack of books and a plan. He has been planning this, she tells him once, when she sketches out revision timetables that somehow include Hufflepuff and Gryffindor both. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. They are building something larger than a house. The Hufflepuff common room becomes the hinge. Its reputation spreads. Safest fire in the castle, softest chairs, least judgment. At first, it is just Gryffindors accidentally walking down the wrong staircase, Ravenclaws invited for group projects that mysteriously run past curfew. Then it deepens. Late-night study circles where colours blur, cloaks piled together in a corner, a Ravenclaw explaining arithmancy, while a Hufflepuff passes biscuits, a Gryffindor practising shield charms in the doorway to muffle the sound. Food appears that no one remembers carrying in: extra toast, a bowl of fruit, pumpkin pasties that taste suspiciously like the kitchen's. Harry knows the route now. He knows the elves by name. They know everything that moves through the castle. He has been planning this too: quiet conversations by the stoves, gentle requests, a reminder that students need strength to learn. Pattern interrupt. One evening, a Slytherin first year stands in the entrance, frozen. Green tie, pale face, eyes darting like he expects hexes. No one throws any. Susan just shifts along the sofa and pats the cushion. Slowly he sits. Later that week he slips Harry a folded scrap of parchment in the corridor. Names. Older students boasting about the Dark Lord's return, about fathers with skull masks. He does not meet Harry's eyes, but his hand shakes. The network thickens. A Ravenclaw quietly warns Hannah about a surprise inspection of known troublemakers. A Gryffindor covers 2 missing Hufflepuffs at detention roll call, voice steady as she invents a story about a sprained ankle. When Umbridge clamps down on one house, another takes the visible risk. Gryffindors cause noisy distractions, Ravenclaws bury messages in homework, Hufflepuffs host the DA under the guise of remedial study. Information runs like water through badger tunnels, never in a straight line, never in one pair of hands. No single group can be easily isolated. No single house can be safely scapegoated. By spring, Hogwarts itself feels tilted. The old 4-way division is still there in banners and Quidditch scores, but among the younger years, a new line is forming, quieter and far more dangerous to tyranny. There are those who drift toward the Hufflepuff fire, who choose loyalty and fairness even when no teacher is watching, and there are those who turn away. The castle is learning to sort itself again. Outside the castle, the world is slower to notice. Ink first. Headlines. The Daily Prophet runs a narrow column the week after the sorting, boy who lived in humble house. Below, a smiling Rita Skeeter byline and a tone that walks a careful line between amusement and dismissal. Perhaps, she suggests, this proves Dumbledore's long-claimed belief that Harry Potter is perfectly safe. After all, what threat could a Hufflepuff pose? He reads it at the Hufflepuff table, toast forgotten in his hand. The words are light, but the shape underneath is sharp. Harmless, contained, a curiosity to be filed away next to Bertie Bott's beans. Hermione leans over his shoulder, eyes moving quickly. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. They know this is not an accident. Someone wants the world calm. The narrative holds for a while. When the chamber opens, the prophet blames Hogwarts, then Dumbledore, then lax standards in student discipline. Harry's house is a footnote, a yellow and black blur in the background of moving photographs. The graveyard shatters that. 2 names return from Little Hangleton, Potter and Diggory, one alive, one not. The first reports are chaos, a storm of conflicting letters from terrified parents and ministry leaks. Harry's own written statement, carefully drafted with Hermione and the goblins at Gringotts, speaks of Voldemort's rebirth, of Death Eaters, of Cedric refusing to abandon him when the portkey went wrong. It is a Hufflepuff death, stubborn and decent to the last breath. Then the eyewitness accounts begin to stack. A Beauxbatons girl writes home about the Badger boy who grabbed my arm and pulled me behind a gravestone. A Durmstrang student under Veritasrum after boasting in the wrong pub admits he saw Hogwarts students in yellow and black, curse-masked men twice their size. Parents send letters to the prophet and to each other. My daughter says she feels safer near the Hufflepuffs. They stand together. Inside the ministry, the tone shifts, but does not soften. Some officials mutter that an inclusive house is a perfect cover for undesirable elements, half-bloods, muggle-borns, werewolf sympathizers, goblin-friendly families. They say it in meetings and in corridors, under portraits that pretend to sleep. Others, quieter, bring parchment lists, the most reliable auras in the last war, the healers who stayed on shift during the worst nights. More Hufflepuff badges than anyone remembered. He has been planning this, Harry thinks, sitting in a cramped interview room as a junior clerk from Magical Law Enforcement fumbles questions. Not Voldemort, the Ministry. The slow turning of suspicion toward any place that refuses to sort people neatly into safe and dangerous. Small things start to move. A Wizengamot elder, old enough to remember bones and pre-wet funerals, stands in open session and thanks Hufflepuff House for its steadfast protection of muggle-born children in these uncertain times. Witch Weekly runs a glossy spread. The house you should have chosen, full of photographs of greenhouses, laughing students and a short profile of a young Auror named Tonks, who shrugs and says, "We just look after each other." In Diagon Alley, first years who have not yet touched the sorting hat buy yellow and black scarves because it feels like choosing safety, like choosing fairness. Far away in a colder room, another kind of discussion unfolds. Reports reach Voldemort of Hufflepuffs, organising tutoring circles that are really dueling practice, of badger-crested students escorting muggle-borns to class in silent formation, of parents whispering that if their children are sorted there, they will sleep easier. He listens. He has always relied on division, pure blood, against muggle-born, ambitious against afraid, house against house. Hufflepuff was meant to be background, soft earth between harder stones. Now it is something else, a symbol of solidarity, of lines that cannot be redrawn by fear. He looks at the map of Britain spread before him, taps one pale finger on the tiny sketch of a badger near the edge. The next phase of the war, he decides, cannot ignore the yellow and the black. And back at Hogwarts, the fire in the Hufflepuff common room burns a little brighter, as if it already knows what is coming. The tower is cold and open to the wind. Stone beneath his hands, dark sky above, the castle breathing quietly below. Autumn of 6th year. Slughorn has arrived with his velvet waistcoats and his practised laugh, and almost at once the invitations begin. Little cream cards that smell faintly of brandy and self-importance. Harry watches one appear on his plate at breakfast, nestled between toast and pumpkin jam, as if the castle itself has decided he belongs on a different sort of list. He has been planning this year differently, less reacting, more choosing, But the Slug Club is not one of his plans. He looks at the card at the looping ink. Harry Potter, if you would do me the very great honour. Around him, Hufflepuffs crane their necks, curious. Only his name. No one else's. At the first party, Slughorn is almost comically eager, steering Harry between tables, introducing him to Quidditch stars and minor aristocrats, talking loudly about his mother. A handful of Slytherins, a cluster of Gryffindors, one Ravenclaw. Not a single badger in sight. Slughorn's eyes keep darting to Harry's face, weighing, calculating. He has been planning this collection for years, and now he has the rarest bottle on the shelf. Harry feels it like grit between his teeth. The way Slughorn says, "My boy, you must let me introduce you to..." As if Harry is an object to be displayed, not a person who walks back to a low, warm common room under the kitchens, who studies beside Hannah and Ernie and Megan until midnight. When the next invitation arrives, he writes a short letter on the back before sending it back with the owl. "I'll come, but only if I can bring a friend from my house." Slughorn hesitates, then relents. That is how Susan Bones ends up in the Slug Club, standing under a chandelier while a retired hit wizard realizes with a start that the quiet girl from Hufflepuff is Amelia Bones's niece. That is how Justin Finch Fletchley finds himself discussing Muggle politics with a half-blood diplomat who has never before considered that Hufflepuff might produce anyone worth knowing. Each time Harry pushes one more name through the door, he looks at her. She looks at him. Sprout's nod from across the Great Hall says everything. A moment of understanding passes between them. If Slughorn insists on hoarding influence, then Harry will quietly reroute some of that flow into the house that was always left off the guest list. Meanwhile, in Dumbledore's office, the lessons turn darker. Pensive stone silver memories, the slow, terrible unfolding of Tom Riddle's choices, Horcrux, soul-splitting. Harry listens, jaw tight, as Dumbledore explains the theory. Strategy, numbers, objects to be found and destroyed, but Harry keeps circling back to the people who touched those objects and never knew. The old woman who wore a cursed ring, the family who guarded a locket, the child who might pick up a diary and bleed secrets onto a page. He asks about side effects, about victims, about what happens to the world around a soul that has been torn and anchored in things. Dumbledore looks tired and a little surprised, as if he expected only questions about how to win, not how to lessen the harm on the way there. Outside, Hogwarts phrase, Death Eater attacks in the papers, parents pulling children home, corridors where colours clump together more tightly than before. Hufflepuff becomes a crossroads by stubborn habit. They have friends in every house, old DA ties and shared detentions and herbology partnerships. It is fragile, this little network of trust, but it holds back the worst of the paranoia, for now. Later that night, Harry stands on the astronomy tower, wind tugging at his robes, Dumbledore's last words about Horcruxes still echoing. Somewhere below, Slughorn is raising another glass. Somewhere beyond, Voldemort's soul lies scattered in objects that hurt everyone who comes near. He looks out at the dark grounds and understands that the next steps will not only measure courage, they will measure what he is willing to break, who he is willing to endanger, how far a Hufflepuff can go into shadow without losing the part of himself that still believes in fair play and shared burdens. The war is no longer an abstract story. It is a series of choices, and each one will test the principles he has built his identity on, more than any description could contain. The castle shakes itself awake with green light. In the Hufflepuff basement, the first sound is not a scream, but a book sliding from a bedside table. Then another. A soft thud of feet on stone. Someone whispers that they heard spells, real dueling spells, not practice. The badger tapestry near the door ripples as if it, too, has flinched. Harry is already sitting up, wand in hand, before he is fully conscious. He has been planning this without admitting it to himself, rehearsing what he would do if the war ever truly reached their common room. Shoes, cloak, listen. Above them, faint but unmistakable, the crack and roar of curses, a distant, awful scream. The prefects react fast. Megan Jones at the doorway, arms spread, voice shaking but firm as she orders everyone back from the exit. Ernie standing on a chair reading the head boy's emergency script from memory, his eyes darting to Harry's empty bed and then away again. They know. When there is danger, Harry is never where he is supposed to be. Justin looks at the rumpled blankets, at the space where Harry should be. He looks at Hannah. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. Harry is out there, which means this is not a drill. By the time Professor Sprout bursts in, earth on her sleeves, the room is a tight, buzzing knot of fear. She tells them to stay together, to trust the wards, to trust the staff. Her voice is steady, but Harry will remember later how her hands trembled when she counted heads and reached his bed. The night stretches, spells fade, the castle settles into a silence that feels wrong. When the Hufflepuffs are finally led to the Great Hall, they walk in a block, shoulders touching, like a single organism that refuses to fray. The sight that greets them is simple and unbearable. The staff table is one chair emptier, Dumbledore's chair. No phoenix, no twinkling eyes, only a gap that seems to bend the air around it. Some of the younger badgers sob openly, faces pressed into sleeves. Others just stare at Professor Sprout, who looks older than Harry has ever seen her, as if a whole growing season has passed over her in one night. McGonagall's gaze sweeps the hall, lands on yellow and black. She holds there. Something in her expression shifts. The house that has always been background suddenly looks like the last solid wall between the children and the world outside. With Dumbledore gone, the old calculus shatters. No single protector, no benevolent headmaster absorbing the worst of the storm. The Hufflepuff traditions Harry has come to live by, mutual defence, quiet resilience, the stubborn refusal to abandon anyone, have to scale from dormitory problems to war. If they can guard a frightened first year from a Slytherin hex, can they guard a corridor from Death Eaters? Harry feels the answer forming like a stone in his chest. He has been planning this too, the Horcrux hunt, the long road, the letters to be left behind in case he does not return. The pull to go alone is almost physical. It is what every story about a chosen one demands. But he is not just the boy who lived. He is the lightning-struck badger. Leaving now is not only about protecting them from what follows him, it is about trusting that everything he has helped build in this house will stand without him. Later, back in the common room, with candles burned low and the air heavy with grief, he tells them. Hannah, Ernie, Justin, Susan, a tight circle around the fire. He explains what he can about Horcruxes, about the task Dumbledore set him, about why he may have to walk out of this room and not come back for a long time. No one begs him to stay, no one calls him selfish. Ernie's jaw sets. Susan's wand is already in her hand. Hannah's eyes are wet but clear as she says that if he must go, then Hufflepuff will hold the line at Hogwarts. They will guard the younger years, guard the secrets, guard the hope that he will need to come back to. They look at each other. More than any description could contain passes between them. Fear, loyalty, a shared, stubborn defiance. Outside, the war is gathering. Inside, in the quiet heart of the castle, a different kind of plan is taking shape, and the next move will not belong to Harry alone. A tent in the woods, too quiet, too still. Weeks earlier, the departure from Hogwarts is not a vanishing act, but a Hufflepuff oath, written into the bones of the castle. Harry sits in the low light of the Hufflepuff common room, parchment spread in careful rows. One letter for Neville, one for Hannah and Ernie, one sealed bundle for Professor Sprout. Each carries instructions, passwords, contingency plans for the DA. If he does not come back, they will know everything they need to keep the younger years safe. He has been planning this since Dumbledore's funeral. Coded phrases that only Badgers will recognize, references to herbology lessons, to old house jokes. Hermione watches him number the pages, cross-reference names, build a quiet network of resistance in ink and trust. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is not just escape. It is succession. On the run, that same instinct shapes every choice. They walk from hedgerow to hedgerow, apparate from one safe house to another, but they do not move like lone hunters. When they hear of a Muggle-born family being processed near a small market town, they divert. It costs them 2 days and nearly exposes the Horcrux in Harry's bag, but they get 3 terrified witches out with forged Gringotts papers Hermione drafted from memory. Tactical Gain says, keep moving. Hufflepuff says no one gets left to the wolves if there is a chance, however small. Their arguments in the tent sound different because of that. Not just where to go, but who they are allowed to sacrifice. Hermione draws diagrams in the dirt. Death Eater patrols, Snatchers, the Ministry. Harry counters with names, the first years who looked up to him, the Muggle-born boy in Hufflepuff who loved Quidditch more than spells. They debate whether stunning a guard to free prisoners is acceptable if it risks a chain reaction. Ron groans that they are losing time. Harry's answer is flat. Winning a war that betrays Hufflepuff's promises is not winning at all. So, when Ron finally snaps and walks out into the freezing night, it is not only a friend leaving. It feels like the house itself has been broken. Ron's words about aimlessness, about Harry not knowing what he is doing, land like accusations against the loyalty Harry has wrapped around himself since 11. The empty camp afterwards is a wound. Hermione's eyes are red, but her voice is precise. This, too, is part of war. Still, Harry lies awake, staring at the tent ceiling, wondering what a Hufflepuff is if people you love can just walk away. His answer comes months later, waist-deep in an icy pool, dragging the sword of Gryffindor and a shaking Ron back to shore. The apology is halting, clumsy, more than any description could contain. Harry listens. Then he offers not just forgiveness, but re-entry into the promise. You left, but you came back. Hufflepuff loyalty bends. It does not break. Sometimes that loyalty risks everything. They stay an extra week at a safe house because the family sheltering them has a squib son on a ministry list. Harry insists on warning Andromeda Tonks in person before the final push, even though apparating to her cottage is dangerous. Hermione argues, then yields when she sees the set of his jaw. So do I. They look at each other. The pattern is clear now. They will not trade people for speed. And then, at last, the 3 of them stand on the hill outside Hogwarts. The castle glows against the dark, windows like watchful eyes. For Harry, the pull is not just toward a battlefield, it is toward the low, warm doorway of the Hufflepuff cellar. Toward the house that taught him that loyalty is an action, not a feeling. Whatever happens when they walk down that slope will decide what Hufflepuff means in this new world, whether badgers are remembered as quiet bystanders or as the ones who stayed, who guarded, who came home to fight. The castle is quiet in the wrong way, not night quiet, held breath quiet. By the spring of Harry's 7th year, Hogwarts under Snape and the Carrows looks like a fortress turned inward against its own children. Detention no longer means lines or polishing trophies. It means Electo Carrow's stubby fingers gripping a cursed quill, words carved into skin and left to scar. Muggle Studies has become a lecture on why Muggles are animals. Amicus walks the aisles grinning as students are ordered to demonstrate the Cruciatus on one another. In the corridors, inquisitorial squad badges catch the torchlight. Some are Slytherins who always liked power. Some are frightened Ravenclaws who think a little collaboration will keep them safe. They walk patrols, report whispers, drag first years to re-education. The air tastes of fear and metal and the faint, bitter tang of dark magic, more than any description could contain, and yet there is a door they have never opened. A barrel wall, low in a stone passage, outside the kitchens, the Hufflepuff cellar. The Carrows try once and leave drenched in vinegar and stinging nettle fumes when they cannot remember the rhythm. After that, they sneer and call it a badger's den. They do not know it is the last unbreached common room in the school. Inside, yellow hangings and warm lamps hide a different kind of war. The badgers have been planning this since the first student did not come back from detention. Since Neville's trembling letter arrived by Secret Owl describing what the DA was becoming under open occupation. Since Hannah Abbott watched a friend's hand shake for days after refusing to curse a classmate. Hannah becomes the de facto DA coordinator in Harry's absence, not because she is loud, but because she is the one everyone trusts to remember every name. She spreads parchment on a low table, safe routes, patrol times, who needs extra food. A small group gathers around her, Ernie Macmillan, Justin Finch-Fletchley, Megan Jones, arguing in whispers about what they can risk. They specialize in sabotage that never hits bystanders, vanishing the souls from inquisitorial boots so they fall on the stairs, slipping skiving snack boxes into Carrow tea so classes end early. Rerouting Filch's keys so doors lock at the wrong moments. It looks like mischief. It is strategy. Their proximity to the kitchens becomes a lifeline. House elves who remember Dobby and Harry quietly pass baskets through the round doorway. Bread, apples, bandages, smuggled chocolate. Hufflepuffs ferry it out under cloaks, up into hidden nooks behind tapestries where targeted students sleep 2 hours at a time. A Ravenclaw girl whose parents are Muggle-born. A Hufflepuff boy who refused to cast Crucio. A tiny Gryffindor first year who cannot stop crying. Professor Sprout walks a careful line. In class, she nods sharply when Amicus appears, lets him bark about discipline while she trims venomous tentacula with steady hands. After curfew, she moves through the cellar, checking bandages, pretending not to see contraband maps. She signs attendance sheets that say everyone is present even when she knows 3 are hiding in a cupboard behind her office. A moment of understanding passes between them when Hannah meets her eyes. The emotional toll is not a montage of heroic music. It is slow, grinding. Hufflepuffs feel every punishment like it is happening to a cousin. They sit with each other after detentions, tracing carved words with slick fingers, whispering that it will heal. They grieve every loss. They keep showing up anyway. Loyalty here is not a banner. It is a decision remade every morning. So when the room of requirement opens and Harry steps out, older, thinner, eyes taking in the wrecked corridor, it is not just Gryffindors who surge forward. It is a network in yellow and black, faces he knows from long tables and quiet evenings, who have been holding the castle's soul together in his name. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hannah presses a crumpled, meticulously updated map into his hand. "We've kept it ready," she says. "He has been planning this. So have they." The corridor smells of damp earth and smoke. Leaves brush Harry's shoulder as he moves, the castle's stone bones suddenly threaded with green. 10 minutes earlier, the greenhouses had been quiet. Now they are a war room. Sprout stands in the doorway of Greenhouse 3, hat askew, wand already stained with sap, as students drag crates and planters into the open. Venomous tentacula writhe in their pots, sensing fear, tasting the storm in the air. Neville is in the middle of it, ink-stained map in one hand, pruning shears in the other, talking faster than Harry has ever heard him talk. "We can anchor the tentacula along the main approach," he says, breathless. "Force them into a bottleneck, pufferpods on the stairs for when they break through. It will blind them, not kill them." He has been planning this in the quiet hours of herbology, in every detour past a greenhouse, in every question he asked Sprout that sounded like idle curiosity and was not. Sprout listens, eyes sharp. She nods once, "Do it." Her wand moves in precise arcs. Roots thicken, pots crack, tendrils spill out like ropes. Together they walk the route on Hannah's map, turning theory into living barricades. Vines are coaxed into archways, leaves charm to slap and tangle at the brush of dark magic. Pufferpod pods tucked into wall sconces like innocent decorations that will explode into clouds of luminous petals the moment a Death Eater races past. Harry watches a corridor transform, stone, torch, tapestry, then stone, torch, tapestry, and a low hedge of snapping tentacula, charmed to distinguish between the signatures of Hogwarts students and outsiders, protective, not indiscriminate. This is Hufflepuff battle doctrine: slow, hinder, disarm, protect the ground and the people on it. Beneath them, the Hufflepuff common room becomes something else. The round, low-ceilinged space is cleared with ruthless efficiency. Sofas shoved back, tables lined with potions, bandages, steaming kettles. The nearby kitchens open their doors. House elves pour out with trays of broth, bread, pepper up, moving with the same quiet focus they bring to feasts. Younger children are guided through the barrel entrance, eyes wide, hands clutching blankets and stuffed toys. A triage nurse from St. Mungo's would recognize the layout instantly. A Hufflepuff 7th year stands beside a house elf twice his age, both of them binding a shattered arm. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. Work now, talk later. The world can argue about blood status some other day. In the corridors above, Hufflepuff students form living walls. 4 across, in a narrow passage, shields overlapping, feet braced. They are not chasing duels on the battlements, they are holding the choke points that keep Death Eaters from ever reaching the children below. When the first curses slam into their shields, they stagger, reset, refuse to move. Glory is irrelevant. The line is everything. Harry's own path through the battle bends around that principle. He scans Hannah's map between spells, checking which escape routes are still open, which safe zones still hold. Twice he breaks away from a duel he could win because a first year's scream cuts through the noise, or because a messenger from Sprout arrives with a tight, urgent look and a single word: breach. He diverts again and again to shepherd dazed students toward the kitchens, to reinforce a faltering shield wall, to rearm a corridor where pufferpods have already bloomed and fallen. Hermione would have counted angles and wards. He counts people. Is this what Hufflepuff was always meant for, he wonders, to be the house that remembers the cost while others chase the legend? One passage near the greenhouses becomes a testament. The floor is slick with spilled soil. The walls are half hidden behind a lattice of conjured trellises now overgrown. Venomous tentacula coil across the ceiling, their movements slow and satisfied. At their roots lie stunned Death Eaters, wrapped tight in vines, wands kicked far away, breathing but utterly contained. A Hufflepuff fifth year in a soot-streaked jumper leans against the stone, chest heaving, wand still raised. His shield charm flickers, then steadies. He looks up as Harry passes. Harry looks back, takes in the scene in a single sweep. The vines, the prisoners, the trembling but unbroken stance. He says nothing, just nods once, deep and wordless, a recognition more than any description could contain. Behind him, deeper in the castle, another boom shudders through the floor. The map in his hand shifts as new ink blooms across it, marking a sudden, impossible movement near the room of requirement. Something is changing there. Harry turns toward it. The forest is already burning at the edges of his map. Harry stands in the corridor, ink still shifting under his fingers, and understands, finally, what that movement near the room of requirement meant. Snape's memories. The quiet bowl, the falling silver threads. A boy in a cupboard, a man begging on a hill, a snake in a woman's body. It all settles into one hard truth. There is a piece of Voldemort in his scar. It will not leave while he lives. He does not think of prophecy first. He thinks of the Hufflepuff table, of second years sharing notes with first years, of Hannah Abbott pushing a plate of roast potatoes toward a frightened Muggleborn without making it a grand gesture, of Cedric's name on a banner that never quite came down, even when the rest of the world wanted to move on. If he walks into the forest and dies, they might live. That is what matters. He has been planning this without knowing he was planning it. Every time he chose to stand between danger and someone smaller, every time he argued for fairness in the DA, every time he refused to leave anyone behind. Now the pattern is clear, not destiny, just the logical end of loyalty. He turns away from the path that leads straight out of the castle. His feet know another route. Down past the kitchens where the smell of bread still lingers, past the barrels that open to the Hufflepuff common room. He stops there. The portraitless stretch of stone looks as it always has, low, unassuming, half hidden. He rests his hand against it, feeling the faint warmth of wards keyed to patience and trust. On the other side, he knows, there are students sleeping in squashy armchairs, a chessboard left mid-game, a stack of herbology essays with soil smudges on the corners. The lid on the barrel shifts. Professor Sprout peers out, hair askew, eyes sharp even in the dim light. She looks at him. He looks at her. A moment of understanding passes between them. "Go on then," she says quietly. "Do what you have to. We'll hold." He wants to explain, to tell her everything. Instead, he just nods because Hufflepuffs do not waste time on speeches when there is work to be done. Outside, the night is full of green light and distant screams. He walks toward the forbidden forest, cloak around his shoulders, stone heavy in his hand. No dramatic last words. Just the steady rhythm of his boots on the grass and the small, stubborn memories that rise with each step. Ernie sharing his notes, Susan patching a torn sleeve with an awkward bit of magic, a badger crest drawn in the margin of a DA attendance sheet. Pattern interrupt? He almost turns back, not out of fear for himself, but because the thought hits him. Sudden and brutal, who will make sure the bank letters get answered, the blood inheritance cases followed, the quiet reforms finished if he is gone? Then he remembers Hermione somewhere in the castle, still fighting for law and wards, and the world they have been reshaping together. So do I. They look at each other in his mind's eye, and he keeps walking. In the clearing, Voldemort waits, surrounded by masked faces and trembling captives. To Voldemort, the world is a ladder of power. To Harry, it is a circle of hands linked around a table, passing bread and stories, making sure no one is left outside the light. "You came," Voldemort hisses. "Of course," Harry says. "Fairness demands payment. This is his." The curse hits. Pain, then nothing. When he wakes beneath the strange white roof of that inn between King's Cross, the choice is simple. Go on because his people are not finished yet. Later, his body is carried back to the castle, not under a single lion banner, but laid where all 4 house colours hang together, smoke-streaked and tattered. Yellow and black press forward, Hufflepuff students shoulder to shoulder, their grief a low, unbroken murmur rather than a roar. They do not need the world to know the whole story. They know. That is enough. And in that quiet, something in Hogwarts itself begins to shift. The hall is too bright. Sunlight pours through shattered windows, catching on drifting dust and the slow rise of smoke from fallen torches. Hours after Voldemort's last scream has faded, the great hall is a field hospital and a chapel and a battlefield aftermath all at once. Benches dragged aside for stretchers, sheets pulled over still faces. Little knots of people who look like they have aged 10 years in one night. And around the Hufflepuff table, a thick, quiet gravity. The benches there are crowded, not with cheering victors, but with students who never left the corridors, who held doors and carried messages and pressed bandages over wounds until their hands shook. Second years wrapped in borrowed cloaks, 6th years with blood on their sleeves that is not their own. A tiny first-year girl asleep against an older boy's shoulder, fingers still curled around a half-empty vial of Dittany. Harry walks past them, limping, cloak scorched. He looks, really looks, and something in his chest twists. This is the house that turned its common room into a ward, that turned kitchens and hidden passages into arteries of the castle's defence. He has been planning this war for years in his head, imagining duels and prophecies. He never imagined this, Hufflepuff, as the spine that did not break. McGonagall climbs the dais like each step costs her. Her voice, when it comes, is rough but steady. She thanks them all, the staff, the fighters, the dead. Then she turns, quite deliberately, toward the yellow and black. "Professor Sprout," she says, and the room hushes further. "And your students. You held the youngest safe when the walls shook. You kept the fires from spreading. You bought us time." Sprout's hands are still dirt-stained. She looks as if she has not slept in days. She looks at her house, then at Harry, then back to McGonagall. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. Later, when Kingsley stands amid the rubble of the staff table, cloak singed, he adds details the world did not see. Escape routes held open by badgers who refused to abandon their posts. Hufflepuff prefects counting, recounting, refusing to let a single child vanish into the chaos without a name and a destination. In his calm, measured cadence, he makes it plain. Without Hufflepuff, Too many would not have made it out. Parents begin to arrive through the patched wards. Some run to Gryffindor, to Ravenclaw, to Slytherin. But again and again, there is the same odd, quiet scene at the Hufflepuff table. A mother clutching a boy in yellow and black who stood between her daughter and a curse. A father gripping the hands of a badger who dragged his injured son to safety. "Thank you," they say to children they had never noticed before. The memorial comes days later. The banners are repaired by spell and by hand, then rehung in the Great Hall at exactly the same height. No lion looming above badger, no eagle soaring over serpent. 4 colours level, equal, watching. Below them a new plaque gleams on the stone. Not just names of the fallen, but lines for what each house gave. Gryffindor, charge and flame. Ravenclaw, sight and signal. Slytherin, guile and gate. Hufflepuff, sanctuary and shield. Harry traces the words with one finger and feels the weight of them settle into the bones of the castle. Elsewhere, in dim parlours and shuttered manors where surviving Death Eaters lick their wounds, they talk in low, bitter voices about what went wrong. Potter, yes. Dumbledore's lot, yes. But again and again, with a kind of baffled irritation, they circle back to the same problem. "The badgers," one snarls. "They would not run. They would not break. We thought they were the soft ones." They cannot quite understand how a house they never bothered to fear became the wall they could not breach. Their confusion only underlines the oldest mistake of all. They never learned to see what did not boast. Weeks later, the hourglasses are repaired. Sand refilled, glass renewed. The Hufflepuff hourglass stands where it always has, but now it catches the light differently. Or perhaps people simply look at it longer. Students begin to walk past and, without speaking, lay fingers against the warm glass. Gryffindors who hid, wounded in the kitchens. Ravenclaws who coordinated from the library. Even a few Slytherins, quick, almost furtive, as if touching an old superstition. They look at each other, sometimes across house lines, and no one quite says what they are thinking. That yellow and black now means something fixed and solid in the magical world's imagination. Not background, not afterthought, foundation. Harry watches one evening as a tiny first year presses her palm to the glass, eyes closed, lips moving in a private promise. He does not interrupt. He just stands there, the boy who lived in Hufflepuff colours, and lets the moment root itself. The hourglass gleams, full and steady, and from this point on, when people speak of courage, they do not picture only red and gold. They picture a ring of badgers around a world that almost fell. The castle is quieter now. No marching Death Eaters, no screaming portraits, just the slow, stubborn work of putting a world back together. In the first autumn after the war, Harry walks through Diagon Alley without a cloak pulled tight around his face. He has been planning this new life in fragments between funerals and testimonies, between long days at St. Mungo's holding hands that shake when someone says the word Hogwarts. He still joins the Auror office, but he does it as a Hufflepuff would, not to hunt for glory, but to guard the ordinary. His case files fill with words like rehabilitation, victim liaison, community warding. When Kingsley asks him to sit on a commission for Muggle-born rights, he says yes before the letter is even finished. It is not glamorous work. It is meetings in cramped rooms, late-night walks through Muggle boroughs to check new protective charms, quiet visits to families who never received a Hogwarts letter because someone tampered with the rolls. He looks at their front doors, the peeling paint, the ordinary shoes in a row, and thinks of Privet Drive, of everything that could have been different if someone had come for him earlier. He has been planning this kind of change, in truth, since the first time he saw a Muggle-born cry in the Great Hall. Around him, the badgers rise. Former DA members in Hufflepuff colours take posts in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, not as enforcers first, but as auditors, ombuds, quiet terriers for fairness. A healer named Megan Jones leads a trauma recovery program at St. Mungo's, specialising in curse scars and survivor's guilt. Hannah Abbott helps design it, then later pours tea for patients at the Leaky Cauldron, listening more than she speaks. Professor Sprout, robes still stained with earth, sits on an education panel and insists that cross-house projects be mandatory, not optional. She remembers a world where the houses fought side by side. She's determined that the next generation will not need a war to learn that lesson. Hogwarts itself changes. House points still exist, but they sit like a quiet tally in the background while the main notice board tracks school-wide achievements. All-house garden restoration, joint spellcraft exhibition, castle wards renewal. First years sleep in their own dormitories, but every term they are assigned to mixed house project rooms with shared study tables and rotating prefect mentors. The Hufflepuff habit of open doors and shared snacks spreads. It becomes normal to see a Slytherin revising in a Hufflepuff nook, or a Ravenclaw napping under a Gryffindor blanket. They look at each other across the tables, suspicious at first, then curious. A moment of understanding passes between them again and again until it becomes habit. Symbolic shifts follow the quiet ones. When Harry is offered the post of head aura a decade later, the prophet runs the headline in black and yellow. A Hufflepuff, leading the very office that once treated his house as an afterthought. In the Wizengamot, a coalition forms around broad procedural reform, automatic legal counsel for Muggleborns, transparent sentencing, independent oversight of Dementor use. Many of its most tireless members wear badger rings. They do not shout. They do not need to. Their voting records speak more than any description could contain. And every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of Hogwarts, Britain keeps a new holiday. Not just a victory feast, but a day of sanctuary. The official programme always includes a moment at the Hufflepuff common room entrance, wards held open, names of the sheltered read aloud. Children who never saw the war know that when the world broke, there was one house that threw its doors open and said, "Come in." Over time, Harry's scar fades from the front pages. People stop staring quite so openly when he walks into Gringotts or a small village bank. But the old habit of underestimating Hufflepuff does not return. The culture has a new scar now, a bright, deliberate line through its history. The year the quiet house stood up and never sat back down. Which means the next great crisis will meet a Britain already shaped by badgers. The question is, what kind of world will they be ready to defend this time? The Great Hall is quieter than it used to be, less chanting of house names, more watching, more measuring. The banners still hang red and gold, green and silver, blue and bronze, yellow and black. But the weight of who they mean has shifted. Gryffindor feels it first. They have grown up in a castle where the boy who lived walks in Hufflepuff yellow, where the DA banners were stitched in badger colours, where the last charge in the Battle of Hogwarts began from the Hufflepuff corridor. Without Harry as their central hero, the Lions learn something unexpected. It is a relief not to be the only symbol of courage. Their common room conversations turn from who will be the next Harry to what does it mean to stand with them? By 5th year of the new era, Gryffindors are volunteering for shield teams, for evacuation routes, for the unglamorous work of ward checks and first aid. Bravery, they discover, is not diminished by sharing the spotlight. It is clarified by it. A lanky, seventh-year prefect pins up a schedule for cross-house patrols and no one laughs. He has been planning this for months, tracing old battle maps, reading every letter from the ministry about security reforms, looking for the gaps ordinary students can fill. The pattern interrupt comes in Slytherin. For a while after the war, they live under a shadow that feels like a curse. Parents whisper. Employers hesitate. The old green and silver seems stained. Then the younger snakes begin to ask a dangerous, simple question. If Hufflepuff could turn loyalty into a weapon against Voldemort, what could ambition become if it wasn't chained to blood? A fourth-year girl with a Muggle-born mother and a Slytherin father stands up in the common room and says, quietly, that she intends to be Minister for Magic. No one asks about her grandparents. They ask for her plan. Some of them look to the badges for a template. Open study groups with Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, public oaths against blood purity, crafted with precise, almost ceremonial language. A Slytherin-Hufflepuff joint proposal to the Board of Governors. Apprenticeships based on skill portfolios instead of lineage. It is still Slytherin. Sharp, strategic, always counting, but the edge points forward, not back. Ravenclaw, meanwhile, becomes the hinge. They have the analytical tools, the habit of asking how systems work, the patience to read every dusty regulation in the ministry archive. What they do not have at first is the instinct to step into the mess. The DA changes that. War changes that more. Long nights in the room of requirement, blue and yellow robes side by side, Ravenclaws drafting battle plans while Hufflepuffs test shield chains until their arms shake. Detached intellectualism starts to crack under shared risk. A Ravenclaw cursebreaker and a Hufflepuff ward mistress later co-author a treatise on ethical defense magic that becomes standard at Aura training. A Gryffindor healer, a Slytherin logistics expert, and a Hufflepuff organizer walk into Gringotts to negotiate a reparations fund. The Goblin account manager looks at their mixed colours, then at the parchment of signatures behind them. More than any description could contain rests in that glance. Interhouse friendships do not fade with graduation. They solidify into law firms that pair Slytherin strategy with Hufflepuff client care. Research teams where Ravenclaw theory meets Gryffindor field trials. Activist groups that send carefully worded letters one day and stand in front of unjust evictions the next. Hufflepuff is often the social glue, the one hosting dinners, remembering birthdays, insisting that no one is left behind in the rush of careers. Years later, the sorting hat rests on a trembling first year's head. The hall holds its breath. The child thinks desperately, I don't want to be in the lesser house. There is a pause, then the hat chuckles loud enough for the front tables to hear and tells them, there is no such thing here anymore. The cheer that rises is not from Gryffindor or Slytherin or Ravenclaw first. It comes in a wave from the Hufflepuff table, steady, welcoming, impossibly loud. Harry, older now, looks across the hall at the yellow and black. Hermione sits beside him. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them as the world they helped build makes room for one more child. And somewhere in the rafters, the castle itself seems to listen, waiting to see which old story will be rewritten next. The hall is bright and full of echoes. The Hufflepuff table roars for the new first year, and for a moment Harry can almost see another boy in that place. A smaller version of himself, knees knocking, hat slipping over his eyes. The memory folds back on itself, and suddenly those early canon scenes start to look different, as if someone has shifted the light. On a broom. First flying lesson. Draco taunting Neville, the remembrall glinting in his hand. In the Gryffindor version of the story, Harry's dive is reckless courage, a daredevil stunt that proves he is born for red and gold. But watch it again. He is not chasing glory. He's defending a boy who has been dropped, mocked, humiliated. He has been planning this without knowing it every time he watched Dudley's gang circle some smaller child and felt his fists clench. The dive is loyalty, not showmanship. Fairness, not thrill. On the train, it is the same pattern in softer colours. A skinny boy with a too large shirt and a bag containing everything he owns. A sandwich wrapped in cling film. Sweets he has never seen before. Ron looks embarrassed by his corned beef. Harry's response is simple. He shares. No calculation, no angle, just a quiet instinct that no one at this age should sit and pretend not to be hungry. Helga Hufflepuff would recognize that without needing a single word. Even his first clash with Draco at Hogwarts reads differently through yellow and black. Draco offers status, a ready-made place among the sneering and secure. Harry turns away, not because it is dangerous, but because it is unfair. He will not side with the boy who laughs at Hagrid. He will not walk with someone who divides the world into worth and unworth. Years later, the pattern hardens into something unshakable. A house elf dies in his arms on a lonely beach. Harry digs Dobby's grave with his bare hands, refusing magic, refusing speed. It is an act of penance and honour, but also of work. Slow, deliberate, back-breaking work for a friend everyone else was taught to overlook. In another life, Professor Sprout would have seen that and simply nodded. The second task of the tournament. 4 figures, under the lake, 4 hostages. Harry knows he's meant to save just one. He cannot. He waits, he argues with himself, then he cuts them free anyway, dragging them upward, because leaving anyone behind feels like a betrayal written into his bones. Later, in the fiend-fire-lit chaos of the Room of Requirement, he does it again. Draco and Goyle are enemies, yes, but they are also boys about to die. He turns back. He always turns back. This is the boy who hates the spotlight, who flinches at applause, who chooses to be an auror on the ground instead of a politician in polished robes. When the war is over, he values Sunday dinners, messy letters from friends, quiet patrols more than Wizengamot speeches. He looks at Hermione across crowded rooms where everyone wants a piece of them, and she sees it too. A moment of understanding passes between them. They never wanted thrones. They wanted the work to mean something. Helga's legacy was never about power. It was about opening the doors to those the others forgot, judging people by their choices, not their blood or house colours. By that measure, Harry has been Hufflepuff from the cupboard under the stairs onward. So, this alternate sorting does not change who he is. It simply lets the castle admit what it has always known. And once you see those scenes in Hufflepuff light, you cannot help but wonder what else might shift when the hat whispers a different word. The mistake begins as a thought, not a curse, a quiet, contemptuous line in Tom Riddle's private arithmetic. Hufflepuff does not matter. In his world, only 3 currencies exist. Power, he can seize. Cunning, he can admire. Ambition, he can bend until it points at him. Loyalty is, to his mind, what lesser minds cling to when they have nothing sharper. Fairness is a story adults tell children to keep them still. He has been planning this war since the first time he walked the Hogwarts corridors and looked up at the banners and saw 4 animals. but only 2 that counted. Gryffindor, he fears in a clean, simple way. They charge, they shout, they make legends and martyrs. Slytherin he understands down to the bone. They plot, they bargain, they survive. Ravenclaw he files away as useful, a library with legs. Hufflepuff, in that cold inner ledger, is a footnote, plodders, spare parts, collateral. So when word reaches him that the boy who lived wears yellow and black, it does not unsettle him. It pleases him. A Hufflepuff. Harry Potter, in his estimation, will be softer, more malleable, more bound by school rules and sentimental ties, less likely to stand on a table and call the school to arms, less likely to become the kind of militant symbol that turns frightened children into fighters. He imagines a boy tucked safely in a basement, not a general in training. What he does not know is that the Hufflepuff basement is a fortress. One entrance, a rhythm of taps on a barrel known only to the house, a common room that feels like a den, low and warm and round, where sound does not carry, and people learn to trust that what is said here stays here. It is the perfect resistance hub precisely because no one who thinks like Tom Riddle would ever look for danger under a pile of cushions and herbology essays. He ignores Sprout's greenhouses too. Plants, in his view, are background. Ingredients to be harvested by others. He does not see the tactical map growing there year by year. Soothing draughts, blood-replenishing tinctures, venom antidotes, vines that can bind a man faster than a rope. He does not see Hannah Abbott learning steady-handed healing, or Justin Finch-Fletchley practicing shield charms between repotting mandrakes. He does not see Harry watching all of it, memorizing which leaf means life. His Death Eaters mirror him. They look for lions and phoenixes. They raid known order safe houses, stalk Gryffindor alumni, sneer at the idea that a badger could bite. Hufflepuff networks are left for later, which means they are left alone long enough to grow. Letters pass from kitchen to kitchen, from pub to pub, from healer to apothecary, carried by people who are never on anyone's list. A moment of understanding passes between those who serve the tea and those who mend the wounds. No one is watching us. So we move. He looks at her. She looks at him. In one version, that is Harry and Hermione at the head of the DA in a Gryffindor common room. Here, it is Harry and Cedric in the low light of the Hufflepuff fire, planning evacuations, food routes, escape tunnels, talking not about glory, but about how to keep first years breathing. More than any description could contain, that difference changes the war. In this world, Voldemort does not just lose to sacrificial love, he loses to stubborn, communal care, to a culture that treats safety as a shared project instead of a private prize. The quiet house becomes the one place his terror cannot easily enter, because he never learned to read its language. And when he finally realizes that the center of the resistance is not roaring in scarlet, but whispering in yellow and black, it is already moving under his feet, preparing something he has never planned for. The center is moving, quietly, under stone and banner and song. By the time anyone names it, the story has already bent. A Hufflepuff. Harry means the saga is no longer about a single boy throwing himself again and again between death and the people he loves. It becomes a story about many hands, many small decisions, and the stubborn, everyday choice to keep showing up for one another. He has been planning this without knowing it every time he shares food in the common room, walks a first year back from detention, stays late to help Hannah with a charm until she stops shaking. In Gryffindor, the legend is the moment of the leap. In Hufflepuff, the legend is that no one has to leap alone. The camera lingers not on a lone figure in a corridor, but on a cluster of yellow and black at a library table on Justin and Ernie and Susan passing notes, building a map of who needs protection. When the DA forms, it is less secret army, more mutual aid society. Tutoring circles, rotating patrols, lists of safe adults. The boy who lived becomes the boy who listens, the one who remembers names, the one who insists that if they are going into danger, they go in pairs. Loyalty, scaled up, becomes politics. The instinct that makes a Hufflepuff stand by a friend in a duel becomes, in wartime, a refusal to abandon werewolves, muggleborns, house elves. Harry sits in the common room, parchment spread out, listening as a half-blood Hufflepuff explains how her father lost his job after the First War. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. Later, when the war ends and the Wizengamot debates who counts as a person before the law, that evening is in the room with him. This is where loyalty stops being a feeling and turns into inclusive institutions. A Muggle-born legal aid office funded from Potter vaults at Gringotts, a new department for non-human cooperation chaired by a former Hufflepuff, school governors who must include at least one parent from each house. The quiet house that always took everyone now demands that the magical world's laws do the same. Hard work, too, is redefined. In canon, heroism often arrives as a single blazing act, a dash into the forest, a duel in a burning hall. Here, Hufflepuffs excel at the labour that comes after the last spell is cast. Harry spends his evenings not only practicing curses, but cataloguing damaged homes, coordinating volunteers to rebuild, sitting with Andromeda while she grieves. The resistance is sustainable because someone keeps the ledgers, brews the potions, replants the greenhouses torn apart by stray curses. It is less spectacular, more exhausting, and exactly what they are built for. Pattern interrupt. What if the real victory is not the final battle, but the fact that 10 years later there are still weekly meetings in the old Hufflepuff common room to check on widows' pensions and orphan stipends? Fair play becomes the blade they hold against both Death Eater cruelty and ministry rot. A Hufflepuff. Harry refuses to let trials turn into spectacles of vengeance. He argues stubbornly that even those who followed Voldemort must face evidence, not rumour, that no one is sent to Azkaban on a whisper. It frustrates people who want a tidier ending. It also means that when he stands up in the Great Hall and says, "Never again," it carries the weight of having insisted on justice, even for those he hates. In that choice, the whole world looks different. This AU stops being just a playful what-if about house colours and becomes a lens on our own systems. What happens when the underestimated values, loyalty, labour, fairness are placed at the narrative centre? When the story belongs not to the loudest, but to the ones who quietly refuse to leave anyone behind? The answer is more than any description could contain, but it starts here. Underground, in a house that has finally realized it was shaping power all along. The corridor is full of steam and whispering copper pots. Somewhere above, the feast is ending. First year, late autumn. Harry stands in the Hufflepuff access door to the kitchens, robes slightly singed from a miscast charm, watching an army of house elves move like a well-rehearsed dance. One of them tugs his sleeve, presses a wooden spoon into his hand. Stir, clockwise 7 times, then tap twice. He has been planning this without quite knowing it, following Cedric's casual remark that badgers always know where the food is. It becomes a quiet montage. Harry learning the trick of cooling chocolate frogs so they do not melt in his pocket. Harry trading a Weasley recipe for treacle tart for an old Hufflepuff notebook of warming drafts. Harry carrying a tray up to a homesick Muggleborn in Ravenclaw, no questions asked. Years later, those same passages and serving hatches become smuggling routes. DA letters folded into napkins, spare wands under bread baskets, a map of patrols baked into a pie crust, Hermione charms to reveal ink when sliced. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them as they realize the war is being fought in corridors and kitchens as much as in dueling chambers. Cut forward. The castle shakes, a stone ceiling groans and drops in slow, terrible increments. Dust, green flashes, the roar of spellfire. A narrow corridor near the greenhouses half collapsed. On one side, the fight, Death Eaters pressing in. On the other, the way to the infirmary. In between, rubble and a widening gap over open air. It is a Hufflepuff who jumps first, robes a blur of yellow and black as they fling themselves across and catch a younger student's wrist. Another badger braces behind, then another, boots sliding on broken stone as they form a human chain. Hands locked on forearms, sleeves, belt loops, passing wounded students along like precious parcels while curses crack the air above their bowed heads. Harry is in the middle of the chain, not at the front, wand arms stretched back to cast shields over them all. For a heartbeat he feels the house moving as one organism, stubborn and terrified, and absolutely unwilling to let anyone fall. After the war, the noise empties out of the world. In Greenhouse 3, late afternoon light filters through cracked glass. Sprout moves carefully between tables, touching leaves, righting a pot here, trimming a dead stem there. Harry walks beside her, fingers grazing the soil. They do not talk about the dead. Not directly. She tells him instead about Helga's first plantings, about seeds carried across marsh and forest, about magic that was meant to feed before it ever learned to kill. At the far bench she stops. A squat, unremarkable plant sits in a chipped clay pot. This, she says, is from Helga's own cuttings. Sprout's hands are gentle but firm as she prizes off a new shoot, wraps the roots in damp cloth, presses it into Harry's palm. For your home, wherever you decide that is, the weight is almost nothing. The meaning is more than any description could contain. Years later still, the room is not a greenhouse but a ministry chamber. Harry sits at a plain table, not in aura black, but in Hufflepuff yellow and soft. Worn robes. No medals, no wand on display. Across from him a thin man in shackles, eyes flinching at every raised voice. Around them, Wizengamot members shift and murmur, some impatient, some curious. Harry reads from a file. A letter from the man's Muggleborn sister, a record of threats. The dates he tried to refuse orders and was punished. Then Harry stops reading and simply speaks. About choice and fear, and what it means to judge someone by the worst day of their life instead of the long, grinding years before and after. He invokes Helga's name the way others invoke Godric's, as a standard, not a shield. We say we believe in second chances, do we? The question hangs in the air like a spell waiting to be answered, and beyond even that, there are scenes this story only gestures toward, a Hufflepuff-led Quidditch victory where the celebration spills not just through their cellar common room, but up into the Great Hall. Yellow and black scarves thrown over Slytherin shoulders, Ravenclaws dragged into impromptu dances, Gryffindors laughing as they are pressed mugs of cocoa instead of fire whiskey. A cross-house study group crammed into the round, low-ceilinged Hufflepuff common room, parchment and biscuits everywhere. Hermione arguing arithmancy with a Slytherin while a first year curls up to sleep by the hearth. A future. Sorting, years after the war, when a small, sharp-eyed child with Slytherin parents walks up, listens to the hat's whisper, and says aloud, clear and steady, Hufflepuff. They look at each other, parents and child, and something old in the hall shifts. The film cannot show all of it, but you can. What scenes does your version of Hufflepuff Harry demand to see brought to life? The hall is still lit by floating candles. The ceiling still mirrors the sky. Above it all unseen, a prophecy still hangs like a blade. This is where the counterfactual has to bow to something older than house colours. Voldemort still rises. He still falls in Godric's Hollow. He still tears his soul again and again, anchoring himself to the world with Horcruxes hidden in cups and lockets, and a diary that waits, patient, in a second-year girl's cauldron. The words Sybil Trelawney spoke above the hogshead do not rearrange themselves because Harry wears yellow and black instead of scarlet and gold. Harry is still a Horcrux. That scar still burns. The connection that lets him look through Voldemort's eyes, feel the cold of his thoughts, is rooted in ritual and soul magic, not in which table he sits at. He has been planning this might not be true in some quiet, childish way, but the story refuses to let him off that hook. The storm is the same. The shelter changes. So the relationships that define him still find their lines. On the train, Ron Weasley still sits down with a corned beef sandwich and a hand-me-down wand, still laughs at the same jokes, still offers friendship without calculation. Maybe they part when the sorting sends Ron to Gryffindor and Harry to Hufflepuff, but the shared humour, the instinctive loyalty, the way Ron will walk into danger just because Harry looks like he needs someone beside him, that does not vanish with a different password on the common room door. Hermione still raises her hand, still reads everything, still meets Harry as an equal in the library where house scarves blur into the background and only ideas matter. He looks at her, she looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them when they solve something no one else has noticed, when the pattern of the stone's protections or the chamber's clues clicks into place. Their bond is built on intellect and ethics, not on a shared dormitory. Snape still hates what Harry's face represents, still shields him with a ferocity that surprises even Dumbledore. That double-edged protection is carved by old grudges Lily's eyes and vows made in a headmaster's office, not by the colour of Harry's tie. Around them, institutions move slowly. The ministry still issues decrees instead of apologies. Pure blood prejudice still coils through drawing rooms and school corridors. Hogwarts still sorts 11-year-olds with a song, and then expects centuries of tradition to do the rest. A Hufflepuff-led DA, a Hufflepuff-led resistance, can pressure these structures, embarrass them, outwork them, but cannot remake them overnight. And Hufflepuff itself is not a choir of saints. There are badgers who look away when classmates are mocked, who cling to pure blood comfort, who choose security over justice. Some will refuse to join Harry's quiet revolution. Some will inform. Some will simply hide. Paradoxically, these constants make the alternate universe stronger. This is not a world where one different sorting fixes everything. It is a world where the same prophecy, the same Dark Lord, the same cowardice and courage and bureaucratic delay all remain, and a different house teaches Harry to navigate those storms with other tools, fairness instead of glory, community instead of legend. The next question is simple. What does that actually look like? moment by moment, when the war comes to Hufflepuff's door. The room is dim and lined with yellow blankets, quiet breathing, the soft crackle of the hearth, the smell of cocoa and old stone. First year Hufflepuff sleepover, autumn rain against the windows. Harry sits cross-legged on a mattress pulled close to the fire, a mug warming his hands. Around him, shoes kicked into a heap, a half-finished exploding snap game, someone's badger-patterned socks draped over a chair. He has been planning this nothing at all. It has simply happened, the way Hufflepuff things do, by accumulation of small kindnesses and shared blankets. In this world, you get to walk into that room with him. Fanfiction first. Imagine the moment when someone asks, lightly, where he lived before Hogwarts. Harry answers, honestly for once, the cupboard under the stairs. Let a quiet fall over the group, then fill it with questions, anger on his behalf, offers of spare jumpers and extra letters home. Maybe a Muggle-born explains social services. Maybe a pure-blood does not know what a cupboard bedroom means, but knows unfairness when they hear it. A moment of understanding passes between them, or you stay with the war. A DA meeting in the Hufflepuff common room turned bunker, told from the point of view of a terrified first year. They watch Harry set up shield drills between the armchairs and the barrel entrance, hear his voice shake once and steady, see how he looks at her. She looks at him. He demonstrates the wand movement again, slower. Your narrator notices the dirt on his sleeve, the way he keeps checking every corner, like he knows everything that could go wrong and is trying to stand between it and them. Later, much later, you write Cedric surviving, dragged back from the graveyard, scarred, older in the eyes. Post-war Hogwarts with two Hufflepuff heroes, Cedric and Harry co-leading reforms, drafting fairer Quidditch rules, house elf protections, aura, oversight. One of them speaks in measured, careful phrases. The other interrupts with blunt questions about who gets hurt. You decide which is which. If you draw instead of write, this AU gives you colours and textures. A poster on your wall. Hufflepuff, House of Heroes in bold black letters over a battle scene. Badgers on banners. Sprouts plants turned into living shields. Harry in yellow-trimmed robes, wand raised, Cedric at his back. Or something smaller. A cosy corner of the common room, blankets, tea, a stack of herbology texts, Harry's trunk open with a single folded letter from the bank at Gringotts peeking out. Character redesigns where everyone carries Hufflepuff in small ways. A braided yellow thread on Hermione's wrist, a badger etched into Neville's wand handle. Maybe you play it. Tabletop campaigns set in post-war Hogwarts under a Hufflepuff headmaster who insists on fairness clauses in every school rule. Aura teams built around house diversity, a former Slytherin strategist, a Ravenclaw researcher, a Gryffindor duelist, a Hufflepuff captain holding them together, or a group of students who notice early signs of a new dark movement, strange pamphlets, whispered meetings near the kitchens, a charm on the barrel door that should not be there. And if you like to think things through, there is meta. Debates about the Sorting Hat's choice. Did it misjudge Harry, or did he mishear himself? Comparisons between canon and this AU. How does a Hufflepuff Harry change Draco's arc, or Luna's, or Ginny's? Does Draco still lean on blood when the boy he envies is famous for loyalty instead of legend? Does Luna find a steadier welcome at the Hufflepuff table? Does Ginny learn to fight beside a house that never leaves anyone behind in the rubble? However you enter, you are doing something very Hufflepuff. Building together. Stories, art, campaigns, late-night essays, all layered into a shared world, more than any description could contain. The next scene is simple to imagine and harder to answer. Once this community of badgers exists, what happens when the wider wizarding world finally has to take it seriously? The question hangs there. What happens when the wider wizarding world has to take this house seriously? In this AU, the answer began with one boy on a stool and a hat whispering in his ear. A single sorting decision, a tilt of intention, and the whole castle shifted. Instead of becoming Gryffindor's banner, Harry walked to the table everyone looked past. From that walk came a reimagined Hogwarts. Study groups in warm, cluttered basements, badgers at the centre of the troll rescue, herbology greenhouses turned into quiet training grounds, Cedric and Tonks teaching a different kind of courage. The war that followed changed with them. No Weasley twin heroics charging first through every door, no assumption that glory solves everything. Hufflepuff. Harry builds a DA that drills evacuation routes and healing charms, that hides safe houses in root systems and warded cellars. The final battle is not a single blazing duel, but a net of prepared corridors, reinforced by people who have been doing background work for years. He has been planning this, not as a lone saviour, but as one organiser among many. It looks magical, but it is also familiar. In our world, Hufflepuff's underdog place echoes every group that is mocked right up until the moment their labour is indispensable. Cleaners who keep hospitals safe, carers who sit through the long, quiet nights, volunteers counting envelopes in the back of a campaign office while someone else gives the speech. They are told they are replaceable, that their work is simple right until the day everything stops, when they do not show up. House stories work like that too. Hufflepuff is called the one for leftovers, for people who are not clever enough, not ambitious enough, not brave enough. Many of us grow up with similar labels: not special, too soft, too quiet, not leadership material. The narrative says, you belong in the background, but softness is what lets you listen to a friend at 3 a.m. Reliability is what keeps teams standing when the impressive leader burns out. Patience is what turns a scattered group into a movement that lasts longer than one headline. Harry hears you would do well in Slytherin, and no, not Slytherin. In this version, the hat listens again and says, then Hufflepuff. He looks at her. She looks at him. The boy who has been told he is a burden sits down among the so-called ordinary and finds out that ordinary is a word hiding 100 kinds of strength. Where does that Hufflepuff energy already live around you? Maybe it is the friend who always answers, the co-worker who quietly fixes the schedule, the neighbour who organises the food drive and never takes the photo. Maybe it is you, doing the unglamorous work, thinking it does not count because no one writes songs about it. Imagining Harry as a Hufflepuff is not only about repainting house banners, it is practice. A small magical rehearsal for seeing power where we have been trained not to look, for asking who we overlook in every room, and what might happen if we finally, seriously, chose to sit at their table. The hall is still full of echoes. The last sparks from the Hufflepuff table drift like fireflies over yellow and black. Harry sits there, in your mind's eye, the war behind him, the crest on his chest, scorched at the edges. He looks tired. He looks steady. He looks like someone who has been underestimated for far too long. Now, it is your turn, at the sorting. If you have walked with him through this timeline, you already have a favourite moment, a Hufflepuff moment. Maybe it was first year, when he refused to leave a fallen classmate in the corridor during the troll incident, even though it meant losing points and praise. Maybe it was in the Chamber of Secrets, where loyalty, not glory, kept him talking to a frightened first year instead of dueling the basilisk alone. Maybe it was the DA meetings, where the room looked less like an army and more like a community that refused to abandon each other. Which scene changed the story most for you? Tell us. Name the chapter where Hufflepuff values bent the plot into a new shape. The small, stubborn choice. The fair compromise. The moment he chose to repair instead of destroy. We want to know everything. And then sort yourself into this world. If you stood in that candle-lit hall beside a Hufflepuff, Harry, which house would claim you now? Would you sit under the Badger banner, building wards and first aid kits for the DA, the one who has been planning this quiet logistics for months? Would you be a Gryffindor flanker in the Battle of Hogwarts, running interference while the Badgers hold the line? A Ravenclaw strategist in the Room of Requirement, sketching maps and herbology-based defences with Professor Sprout. A Slytherin diplomat after the war, walking into the bank at Gringotts with new laws and old promises, making sure no house is left out of the rebuilding. Describe it in the comments. What is your role in this resistance, in this recovery? Where do you stand when the doors of the Great Hall blow open? If this AU has started to live in your head, let it keep growing beyond this video. If you have written fan fiction in this timeline, link it. If you draw, post your art of DA training in Hufflepuff colours, or of Cedric and Tonks standing at Harry's shoulders, and tag it with Hufflepuff Harry AU so others can find it. If you only have a sentence, leave your headcanon about a side character. Hannah running a post-war clinic, Ernie arguing policy in the Wizengamot, a muggle-born Hufflepuff sending the first honest letter home about Hogwarts. Use that same title phrase, Hufflepuff, Harry AU, wherever you share, so these scattered stories can recognize each other when they meet. When you are ready to keep walking, there is more. You can step sideways into other sortings, a Slytherin Hermione using law like a blade, a Ravenclaw Ron turning strategy into his own kind of magic. You can dive into the older histories of the houses or hold them up against the frameworks we use in our own world to explain why people do what they do and ask what those systems miss. For now, come back to the end. The Battle of Hogwarts. Smoke. Rubble. Harry in yellow and black standing before the shattered doors, wand lowered, hand extended. He looks at her. She looks at him. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them and then outward through every house, every banner, every survivor. The screen pulls back to the Hogwarts crest. Red, blue, green, and there, almost unnoticed at first, gold on black, glowing a little brighter. Not erasing the others, illuminating them. Stories are sorting hats we hold in common. Houses are only choices we agree to honour. If this one spoke to you, add your voice to it. Rewrite the letter. Rewrite the world. And, for tonight at least, save a seat at the Hufflepuff table.